Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
Sorry for what? Our daddy taught us not to be ashamed of our dicks, especially since they're such good size and all.
Yeah, I see that. Your daddy gave you good advice.
It gets bigger when I pull on it. Sometimes, I pull on it so hard, I rip the skin.
Well, my daddy taught me a few things, too, like how not to rip the skin by using someone else's mouth instead of your own hands.
Will you show me?
I'd be right happy to.
Listening to Synchronon. Sick and Wrong. Yes, you're listening to Synchronon.
The Sick and Wrong, the world source for antisocial commentary.
God, what a bunch of scumbags.
Good evening. Welcome to Sick and Wrong, the world source for antisocial commentary. I'm one of your hosts, D. Simon.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Kate Rambo.
What's cracking there, Kate Rambo?
That was pretty good, wasn't it? Come on.
It was very convincing. I thought you were from the southern U.S.
Did you think I was Dolly Parton?
No.
Oh, that's what I was going for.
Kelly Clarkson.
Oh, what? That's such an insult. Why would you insult me within the first minute of this show? It's my job to do that with you.
So, Kate, I'm feeling healthier now. Got my second dose, the second shot of the Pfizer vaccine.
Fully vaccinated Jew
Gotta
on
say,
the streets.
Gotta say that one was rough. That was rough. I got it just on Thursday, and I was fine. Because what they do here is you got to go to the Forum, which is where the Lakers used to play. They have these big stadiums, so they can inoculate you in mass. But you go through a car, you drive through the thing, and they give you a prick on your shoulder, and then they make you sit there for 15 minutes to make sure you're not passing out at the wheel. I was fine. It's fine. Drove home. Arm hurt a little bit. Not too bad. And then probably 11 o'clock at night, it just came on hardcore. All of a sudden, I started getting the flu-like symptoms. Headache, fever, coughing. Didn't sleep at all that night. It was rough. Sweating, just like a flu, having the flu, which I haven't had in a long time. Felt like shit all day. Had to work all day. Fucking sucked. Yeah. My friend Danny got the Johnson & Johnson one, which is
That's
just one shot.
That's the one I want.
Yeah, it's one
I'm
shot. He said it wasn't that bad.
I've heard that the second one often makes people feel fluey and it makes them feel sick. But what was the turnover from you having your first jab to your second?
Let's see, March 5th to the 20 days.
That's so weird because over here it's 12 weeks. I know people who've been waiting 12
weeks. I thought you had to do it within 3 weeks or something. Yeah, I think you had to do it within 3 weeks.
Oh, that's crazy. No, I know somebody who's two people who've been waiting 12 weeks and some people have been getting 6 weeks. Who fucking knows, mate? It's just, they're injecting microchips into you anyways, so. I
like that meme. Kay sent me a meme saying they're not injecting microchips, so don't worry, people. They're injecting U2's next album.
Sadly.
Which would be the worst. I'd rather have the microchip.
Yeah.
So Governor Newsom here in California said they're opening it up to everyone over 18. If you're over 18 years of age, they're opening it up on April 15th. So to everybody. Wow. Yeah, because what it's been here is food and agriculture. And then they also do a lottery if they have extra ones. That's how I got in. But once this time, because when they book you, when I got the appointment, they book you 2 appointments for for the first and second shot. So this time I just kind of drove through and they didn't even ask for any kind of verification. But now they're opening up to everybody. Is it like that in the UK? Are you guys allowed to go get pricked?
Not at all. Can we all get pricked? If you're considered vulnerable or if you're caring for someone who is vulnerable, all these people can basically go and get they're invited to go and get it. But because I'm healthy, I'm in my 30s, I think I'm probably not going to get my first one till about June time. Maybe April, June. Yeah, at the minute it's 50 plus, and then it'll drop to 45 plus, and then 40 plus, and then it's my age range. Then I can go.
Wow, that's weird. Yeah, I figured. It's such a small country. It's not even the size of fucking Texas, and it's taken that long.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it takes as long as it takes, doesn't it?
Well, I
but
think
you
it's 'cause
only
the
got
US
lucky because of a lottery system, whereas you'd probably still be
no, I'm
waiting.
just saying. I think it's taking that long to vaccinate everybody, but I think the U.S. is just bogarting all the vaccines.
Well, a lot of your people are turning them down as well, aren't they?
Well, that's an interesting statistic. Is there's a good question. A lot of people are wondering. Like the infectious disease experts are wondering how many people actually get the vaccine, because we need to get at least 70% vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. But a lot of the millennials and the Gen Zers just don't want to do it. Like they're just, like, I was reading a statistic. Gen Zs and millennial adults between 18 to 34 are now saying, like 23% they're just said they're not getting vaccinated, and 21% said they haven't decided yet. So that's like almost half of the millennials and Gen Zers that are just like, I don't know if I'm going to do it.
Stop slating the millennials, because I'm a millennial.
Well, but this 18 to 34 though that's a stat that was polled, and 23% are like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, but that's not a millennial. A millennial is 24 to, is it 38, 39?
Well, it's within that range. It says Gen Zs and millennial adults between 18 and 34.
I'm taking offense that they're coming for my people.
Well, it said that,
You're
that
American
age
people,
range.
but yes. Well, I'm going to get it. Why not? But I can kind of see what they're saying. If they have to go to the bother of going to the doctor and they can't be fucking asked. Yeah.
Well, I think
wait for herd immunity. They're
I
the
think
ones
that's what they're.
spreading it.
Yeah, I think that's what they're saying is like. I mean, because here it's like they don't even care. Like you look at the spring breakers, like they're probably all Gen Z in Florida. They're partying like as if there was never any pandemic to begin with. So it's like I don't think they gave a shit to begin with, and now they're just like, who cares? It's like we're not going to die from it. So why do we need to get vaccinated?
Very low levels. Well, you know what? You're doing it for your fellow man. That's why you're doing it.
Well, they also don't know the full effect. Like some people, you might not die from it, but if you get sick from it, you might have like lifelong lasting effects.
Oh yeah, long-term COVID, which can fuck you up.
To your respiratory system and things like that you don't even know. So I mean, I would err on the side of caution and get vaccinated. But I mean, it's not just the breakdown of generations here. It's also gender lines. 71% of American men saying that they've either been or are planning to get vaccinated, whereas only 55% of American women.
What's with the women? Why they
I don't know. Isn't that weird?
Do you think it's because early on, can you remember there was that rumor when the vaccines first came out and everyone was like, oh, apparently it makes you infertile. Can you remember that rumor? That was a big thing over here.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's totally disproven, it's not going to happen. I think maybe that a lot of people have heard that and been like, yeah, I'm not going to go and get it.
Well, I've heard like like my sister's, her doctor's advised her not to do it because she's breastfeeding right now.
Ew, yeah, she doesn't want to breastfeed the vaccine into her baby.
Yeah, Shmuley grow flippers. A little bit of my kid.
Isn't he going to grow them anyways? Because he's like nearly Jewish.
Well, who knows? Came out of my sister. But I was reading this and it kind of pissed me off because I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with these Gen Zers and millennials? Like do they just want to stay home and play video games and whine on Instagram about how depressed they are? Or do they want to go to the pub? They want to go to the bar? Because I want to go to the fucking bars. I want to go see live music.
Want to go and do that. The Gen Zers want to sit on the Reddit and come and attack people for whatever. Stop bringing my lot into this. We're nice.
A lot of millennials don't, or at least American millennials are not going to get vaccinated.
Let's change that. The British millennials, we're a good lot. We want to be in the pub having a good time again. The American millennials obviously don't.
Who knows? Shame. I don't know, but it pisses me off. People, go get your fucking vaccine so I can go drink in a goddamn bar. All right?
Get off your soapbox, mate.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm getting bitter about it. I want to go to a pub again.
Het up. Yeah, like stop getting so het up. It's all right.
It's not. I'm sick of being locked in my home.
Are you sick?
I want to get some. I want to go hit on some drunk slags. Buy him a White Russian. Try to impress him with my sophistication.
The smoking jacket.
But so that you have these people, these Gen Zers, and the millennials that are against it. But then you also have all the weirdo conspiracy theorists who are just like, Bill Gates is trying to inject us with his semen, and it's like, I'm not going to do it, and the microchips and all that. Well, just this past week in Texas, a man held National Guard soldiers who were transporting a truckload full of COVID-19 vaccines, held them up at gunpoint, pulled them over to search the truck. It's crazy. This is on Monday, on March 22nd. Larry Lee Harris, 66-year-old man, impersonated a detective, and he pointed a gun at U.S. National Guardsmen who were driving like a truck full of vaccines near Idalou, Texas. Not quite sure where that is. About 100 miles from the New Mexico border. He was armed, pulled over 3 vans on the highway, and then held them up at gunpoint, made them get out of the car, and then he went and searched their vans. Like, because he had a theory of what was inside. I'll get to that in a second. But what I don't understand, these guys are National Guard. There's 3 vans. This guy tried to run the vans off the road multiple times and eventually was able to commandeer the vans by steering them into oncoming traffic and then pulling them off the side of the road. How the hell does that happen?
This sounds like the Wild West, doesn't it?
Well, it's just crazy to me. I mean, there's this one guy, and he was driving a truck. There were 3 vans that had the vaccines. And then he pulled them over, and then he came and posed as a detective, and he demanded to search the vehicles because he claimed that inside the vans were women and children that were being abducted.
Oh, that's not where I thought that was going to go.
Well, I don't know. I wonder what it's about. Wait, what do you think?
I always thought it would have been vaccines. I want these vaccines.
Well, that's where I was going with this. So yeah. He pointed a gun at these National Guard soldiers. He identified himself as a detective with a fake badge and everything. And then he demanded to search the vehicles. And they were like, all right, that's fine. They got out of the car. Let them search the vehicles. And then they, obviously they called the cops. And then the cops came and they were like, yeah, you're not a detective. You're under arrest. And this police chief here, Eric Williams, said that he was saying he was looking for a woman and child that had been kidnapped. But there are no reports at all in that entire region of anyone that had been kidnapped, woman or kid. And so the investigation's ongoing and trying to uncover his motivation, like what was driving him to do this. And he was taken into custody without incident. So the authorities are declining to disclose whether he was specifically targeting the National Guard for the vaccines, or if he knew how many doses these vans were carrying. But he was charged with aggravated assault, impersonating a police officer, unlawful restraint. But this does raise questions about the, vaccine supply chain here and security and vulnerability, obviously, this guy by himself pulled over 3 vans. Seems like it's a pretty easy thing to steal vaccines. So it made me wonder, like the first thought, because I was obviously doing some research for the show, and we're talking about the Dixie Mafia of the South that was very active in the 1960s and 70s. I was wondering, I wonder if this is like a Dixie Mafia thing. Like this guy's stealing vaccines to sell them.
On the black market.
Yeah, he probably could.
Yeah, I bet it's happening. It's
going to be very difficult to do. You'd think vaccines are in more or less a limited supply, so it makes sense that someone would be trying to steal them, or on the flip side, destroy them. I can see that too.
Yeah.
But God, would that be great if they uncovered this guy was part of a whole Dixie Mafia operation?
Yeah,
like an organization, and they were targeting vaccines, and he was just one of the gunmen for it or something.
Yeah, and they're also QAnon.
So the Dixie Mafia, I've been wanting to talk about them for a while. Just, I don't know, never really got around to it. But, it's interesting, people. When we come up for topics for the show, oftentimes, people send us topics. And, both Kate and I do a lot of reading, so we find things, and then we, bookmark them to talk about later on the show. But we plan these topics out. We plan these shows out, a couple months in advance. So this is just a topic I've been wanting to do and just never got around to it. But then I started researching this week about the Dixie Mafia, and then I read this article about this guy stealing the vaccines in Texas. And I was thinking, wow, this actually could be the Dixie Mafia, who we don't even know if they exist. They did exist at one time, but people don't really know what form they exist now, but they still think that they're around.
So that's kind of like the real mafia, because people say that they don't exist anymore, but they certainly still exist on the south side of Sicily.
Well, I think, yeah. But I think the mafia, the American mafia still exists.
Yeah, but not in the kind of way that it was in the 70s. No,
definitely not like in the
but they're still,
70s,
I mean, the mafia ran everything in the 70s. But now, do they? You don't know.
Well, you don't. I mean, I think they might have gone underground. I do know in San Francisco, the mob owned all those strip clubs at one point. But then, then they had to like kind of not really divest, but sort of like hide behind a management company. But yet they're still running the show, and I think they probably do that, especially in like on the East Coast, like in New Jersey and New York. But the Dixie Mafia was based in the southern United States. It's a criminal organization that started in Biloxi, Mississippi, but it operated primarily in the southern United States, several states. In the late 60s, 1970s. And the group used each member's talents in various crime categories to move stolen merchandise, bootlegging illegal alcohol, selling illegal drugs. But it was also particularly well known for violence. So they began kind of working, like they began in the late 60s, working as just like a loosely knit group of traveling criminals that just did low-level crimes like residential burglary, robbery, theft. And there's no real chain of command. It was just whoever had the most money would just hire these guys out to commit petty crimes.
Okay.
And unlike the American mafia, who had like, country of origin and a blood oath to your family, there is no connection like that. It was just a bunch of like sort of individuals who sort of knew each other. Well, yeah. And like, people who were in prison together and things like that. But just like loosely connected individuals of several different nationalities that just had a common goal, which was to make money and wield control over illegal money-making operations like moonshine and probably methamphetamine and drug production. And they influenced peddling, bribery of public officials, and murder. I mean, it was just like they definitely had like a mafia of the Deep South, and most of their contract killings were against former members.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So well, that would be like the mafia too. Is it like snitches?
Snitches. That's the thing. Victims were most often murdered because they testified or threatened to testify against fellow members.
Snitches get stitches.
Snitches get stitches. So the Dixie Mafia, otherwise known as the cornbread Cosa Nostra of the South.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good, huh? I didn't come up with that. I stole it. But in the 1960s, the Dixie Mafia was just a loose confederation of crooks and con men, all based in Biloxi, Mississippi. But they spread out, over the next decade to become a lethal criminal organization. So they kind of started out in the, I would say they were established in the late 60s. But they were like, there wasn't just one Dixie Mafia. There were several different Dixie Mafias that spread from the Gulf Coast, from Texas all the way to Florida. And even though national prohibition was ended, in 1933, a lot of southern states stayed dry for decades afterwards.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so that's why there's so many moonshine.
That's what would happen,
right.
Out of necessity. Everyone has to have their alcohol. There are just deep networks of like, bootlegging operations.
So are these guys kind of like motorcycle clubs where it'll be like, there's one in this town, one in this town, one in this town. They're kind of like affiliated with each other. Like one of them might know like, Bobo over in Mississippi.
I think that's what it was. But there weren't like, capos, how it is in like the mafia where there's like the leaders who'd all meet up and decide. It wasn't like that. It wasn't that organized, but I'm
so
sure
they weren't
these guys
coming together to do heists.
Well, no, you know how like you'd have like the head of the Gambino clan and the head of like
Carlos.
Yeah,
yes.
They would all get together and they'd decide like, all right, these are our territories and things like that. It wasn't like that organized. I think it was kind of like I was in prison with you back in Arkansas for moonshine, so you kind of loosely knew people, but you didn't trust anyone. You still murder them at the drop of a dime.
Oh, okay, I like it.
So the Dixie Mafia, sure, it originated in Biloxi, Mississippi, but it kind of like the origin you could trace back to the Appalachian states, dating back to the Whiskey Rebellion and the secessionist movement of the Deep South. And so they had this view, which I think a lot of them still do. Obviously, look what happened on January 6th, that the federal government's oppressive and that criminal enterprise against it's justified, you know. And so that's kind of why, like in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama, they're just like, this is just part of our lifestyle. The government's trying to fuck us, so let's fuck them back, you know. And they had this attitude, and it kind of justified their criminal activities. But it was hard because they didn't have like, you know, a specific area of activity. It was hard for like the federal government to track them down, and not to mention, you know, they were in like rural areas. And so it was really hard to pinpoint, you know, the epicenter of the operation. And there was no like head of the operation. So you couldn't like stake out this, you know, this one leader and tap their phones and all that. Because probably most of them didn't even have phones.
This would make an amazing video game.
Well, you know, I read that there's that video game, The Mafia 3. It's like a, I think it's a PC video game. I don't have it. But they do have, in one of them, it does have a Dixie Mafia faction.
I like this. These people are all the type of people that remind me of, like, they probably, like, oh, yeah, I saw Bonnie and Clyde when they came out of that bank, and I didn't say nothing. It's that type of person.
Just scary hillbillies is what these people are.
Yeah, the hills have eyes.
So the Dixie Mafia committed most of their crimes in areas that lack strong, coordinated law enforcement. You know, you just like, think about it. It's like hillbilly deputies, you know, in these rural counties.
People.
Yeah, well, like the deputies know everybody. They probably don't even like patrol with a gun. They've probably never shot anybody. And meanwhile, here they are with like a, you know, a moonshine operation in the backwoods. And, you know, to be honest, they probably know these guys.
They probably
went to school with them. You know,
well,
they probably
they're not going to school.
I don't know if they went to school, but they probably grew up with them in the same community. They probably know them, and they probably just kind of, you know, ignore some of the questionable activities, you know, in these areas. And so members of the Dixie Mafia created like seemingly legit businesses. One of the businesses that they did is buying and selling junk or antiques. A lot of them owned these antique shops that were fronts.
Oh, and I bet they were great antique shops.
Probably,
that's like my front business. And I'm like nearly in the Dixie Mafia now.
You probably could. I mean, I'm sure you could have an Etsy store. Meanwhile, in the back, you're like selling illegal, you know, moonshine, making your own book fast.
I would drink my own book fast too.
Yeah. So the Dixie Mafia kind of first emerged American South, late 60s. But there's no like ethnic heritage, as I said before. There's no hierarchy or oath that they had to abide by. They were just a ragtag like band of crooks who were willing to do almost any crime as long as there's some money involved. So there's no honor here amongst these thieves.
I like them. I like these people. Yeah.
And like from murdering authority figures to burning down buildings to elaborate extortion schemes, you know, they did anything for a buck gang is what these guys were. The only rule that they had and the only rule that they rigidly enforced was thou shalt not snitch to the cops.
Yeah, and don't be a stool pigeon.
Yeah.
As Bonnie Parker put it. No stool pigeons.
But far from a sophisticated organization, I mean, it's just a very loose network. I mean, the FBI was aware of them, but it was really hard to track them down. They primarily operated in Biloxi, Mississippi, but their reach stretched from like Atlanta, Georgia to Tulsa. And they all had like these different kind of factions that operated independently of each other. Now, Biloxi at this time, you know, even before that, years before, was like it was like a haven for illegal gambling. You know, a lot of them have like gambling on those ferry boats and things like that.
I've got to get myself to Biloxi. This sounds like a cool city, man. It's a cool town.
It was definitely seedy.
Boys.
Well, it was definitely seedy at this time.
Boys. Yeah.
But it also had ongoing corruption of local officials. Like the local officials there, like knew that there was gambling, profited from the illegal gambling, and definitely turned a blind eye towards it. So it was an attractive place for people who, you know, didn't exactly abide by the law.
Yeah, I would have moved here in the 70s.
So there's an area called the Strip in Biloxi, Mississippi, which was like the home base for the Dixie Mafia. And this is where Mike Gillich Jr., we have a picture of this guy. He was kind of if you want to say there was a leader, you could say it started out here with Mike. Here's Mike Gillich. He was eventually arrested. He's definitely older here. But he was the group's unofficial, like, de facto kingpin of Croatian descent, this guy. So,
was he?
Yeah, he was originally from
Croatia,
from a large, poor family. But he raised himself in the city's Point Cadet section, and he became a wealthy entrepreneur along the Strip. He owned a string of motels, nightclubs, strip clubs, gambling dens, bingo parlors, and he was known and trusted by almost every member of the Dixie Mafia, especially those who didn't trust anyone else. They trusted this guy, and he called the shots.
He is like the capo then, isn't he?
Well, he was also the patron and protector and mentor of Kirksey McCord Nix Jr., one of the gang's most notable members. We got a picture of this guy, too. Kirksey, there he is, also getting arrested.
I like the name Kirksey. It sounds more like a nickname, isn't it? Kirksey.
Kirksey. Yeah, I don't know if it's Kirk and they just call him Kirksey, but Kirksey McCord Nix Jr. was the son of a prominent judge in Oklahoma, actually. Yeah, but that didn't stop his life of crime. I would say it probably encouraged it.
Yeah.
You know? But he was definitely, I would say he kind of took the mantle to become the leader. Definitely one of the more well-known members of the Dixie Mafia, still in prison for life.
Yeah.
By the 80s, the blurred lines between government officials and Dixie Mafia members in Mississippi had become so extreme that federal authorities designated that entire area as a criminal enterprise, including the local authorities.
So was it getting to like escape from New York territory where they're going to start like just building a wall around it?
Put a wall around it and make it a prison.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was that bad yet.
Let's leave them to their own defenses.
But this was kind of common with the Dixie Mafia. They aligned themselves with local authorities, paid them off, would put hits out on the ones that were really trying to oppose their operations. We're going to get to one authority figure who's definitely a pain in the ass for the Dixie Mafia in a minute here.
Oh, yeah.
But this guy, a deputy here of Russell County, Alabama, Albert Fuller, got a picture of him. He was responsible for a number of crimes. So he was, a deputy. He was a policeman. There he is. He probably committed this murder, but he was responsible for a number of crimes, including extortion, prostitution, and murder. All while holding up the power of the law. But he and three others were charged with the murder of a nominee for the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, Albert L. Patterson. They just murdered him right outside like a restaurant in his car. But the funny thing about
so this is the crime scene photo then, because we're clearly outside a restaurant. You can see the menu.
Oh yeah, this must have been when they shot Patterson.
For that.
But yeah,
it looks like a Ouija photo. This doesn't it? Like Ouija
could be. I'm not sure.
Well, it's not Ouija because he didn't leave New York, but it has the vibe. It's all of it. Even though they look like they're nearly in the 1940s as well.
This would have been this probably would have been the 60s, maybe. Yeah, probably late 60s. But it was rumored that Fuller could shoot the high heel off a whore from 50 yards away.
Oh,
he's a good shot.
I found that attractive. That's like a quality I never knew I needed in a man before, but I'm putting that on the list now. Just I want my high heel shot off by a man. That's how he could ask me out on a date.
Just shoot your high heel off from 50 yards away.
Shoot my high heel off from 50 yards away, and I'd blow him a kiss, and that would be it.
But in addition to forming alliances with members of law enforcement, like Fuller over here, the Dixie Mafia also worked alongside fellow mobsters. So they didn't have formal ties to the actual La Cosa Nostra, the actual mafia, but they did have I guess you could say a quote-unquote understanding with some mafia figures, especially one in particular who kind of ran the show down in the southern United States right here, Carlos Marcello. Very powerful mafioso.
What the real mafia thought of this lot, if they just thought they were bumbling idiots or hicks, or they maybe had no interest in the South themselves, so they were like, we don't care, we're not going to go into there.
Oh no, they made a lot of money in the South. Marcello, one of the most powerful leaders in organized crime in America, he, you can read a lot about him. He operated in New Orleans. He ran New Orleans.
Okay.
And so this was around the same time the Dixie Mafia was kind of rising to power. He tolerated the Dixie Mafia as long as they played by his rules and they paid for his hospitality.
There you go.
So they definitely, had to give him a couple kickbacks here and there. But they had an understanding, He would even use Dixie Mafia members to collect debts and carry out hits.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, they were useful. A retired FBI agent here, Keith Bell, said that they were doing anything and everything illegal down there. They didn't care as long as there was money involved. For money, the sheriffs and officers loyal to them would release prisoners from the county jail. They would safeguard drug shipments. They would hide fugitives. Anything, for money.
Yeah.
Especially in New Orleans, which is just like such a sketchy city to begin with.
Oh, it's seedy through and through, isn't it?
One member of the Dixie Mafia put it, what makes them so dangerous is they don't think, they just act. Like there's no forethought. I don't even think there's any kind of rational thought. They everything's fair game. These are just like ruthless rednecks. I'm sure the mafia probably just despise them.
Oh yeah, I bet, because in the mafia there's the code of honor, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's like respect.
And there's respect, and if you do any of them, there's going to be consequences. But these guys are just like running wild, aren't they?
They're cutthroats.
I like them. Yeah,
but
I'm into it.
They were useful. They're definitely useful. So there's several high-profile crimes. Some of these you might have heard of that are linked to the Dixie Mafia. This first one actually never happened, but just to show you how, I guess, useful they could be and how influential they were. The Dixie Mafia was actually being, there was a bounty that was put out on a hit on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and they tried to hire the Dixie Mafia to do this hit. So this happened this is like 1967, just before Dr. King was murdered. In Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, there's an inmate named Donald Nilsen who actually wrote to law enforcement. He was about to be released from prison. He wrote to law enforcement saying that he was trying to warn them about a threat to a national political figure, namely Dr. King. He met with the FBI and he said that a fellow inmate, Larry McManaman.
He's Irish.
That's a hard one to say.
Ireland. Yeah, Mac. Let's just call him Mac.
Let's call him Mac. Well, let's just call him Larry or Leroy. Leroy McManaman.
Man.
He promised Nissen a share of $100,000 if he helped him murder Dr. Martin Luther King. So the agents.
That little money. You'd want more than $100,000.
Well, $100,000 in 1967. It's kind of a lot of money.
How much is that now? Is that like $500,000? You'd still want. I'd want
got to be more than that.
I want over $1 million.
But think about it. These guys are in the deep south. Yeah, I bet you the money goes a long way there.
Yeah, but you're still doing a dangerous thing, and you're going to be hunted.
He's a national figure,
Yeah.
So McManaman outlined two available roles for Nilsen. He could Nissen, that's his name, not Nilsen. Dennis Nilsen's a completely different person.
Yeah, Dennis Nielsen's Dixie brother.
He either could conduct surveillance on King and report his movements to the actual killers, or he could be part of the killing himself. And so he also asked his cellmate, John May, a master machinist, to construct a special gun for King's shooting. So additionally,
so elaborate.
Nissen told the FBI that if he said yes to McManaman, there'd be a series of go-betweens that would link Nissen into the conspiracy, allowing him to avoid the suspicion of law enforcement. And these go-betweens included a female real estate agent in Jackson, Mississippi, another man named Floyd, an individual with connections to the U.S. Marshal's Office. I mean, there were lots of ties to law enforcement officials, to other members of the Dixie Mafia. He also said that, or McManaman, who was involved with the Dixie Mafia, said that the money for the assassination was coming through the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan of Mississippi. So the KKK was hiring members of the Dixie Mafia to put a hit on Dr. King.
Well, that seems about right, doesn't it? That seems like something they would do.
Well, this snitch over here ruined the whole thing. Or did he?
Ooh.
But they were implicated in a number of high-profile cases. So one of them, which actually was an inspiration of a movie called Walking Tall, involved Sheriff Buford Pusser. It's a great name. Buford Pusser. Yeah.
Buford. Only in the south of America do you get men called Buford.
You know, look at his misshapen face. It's a hell of a mug this guy has.
I know.
That like baseball bat looking thing actually kind of looks like French bread, kind of a baguette or something.
Baguette, yeah.
But it's actually this like custom made baseball bat that Buford used to use to kick the shit out of the Dixie Mafia and moonshiners. He'd bust up whiskey stills. But yeah, his face is misshapen for a reason, and we'll get to that in a minute. But he inspired the 1973 film Walking Tall and its depiction of a lone sheriff single-handedly waging war against the criminal underbelly of a small town. That sheriff right there is Buford Pusser.
Do you know what film also has that exact same narrative? Roadhouse.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's the same kind of deal.
Patrick Swayze comes into town and he stops the mafia / Ben Gazzara, doesn't he?
Well, yes, but he was
Roadhouse,
protecting
baby.
a bar. He wasn't, like, this guy was a sheriff that was protecting the town.
It's creative license. I just wanted to mention Roadhouse.
Also, Patrick Swayze wasn't against drinking. That's why this guy's kind of a
He
dick.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I don't think Dalton drank, though. Was he sober?
No, yeah, Dalton was sober. Rest in peace, Sam Elliott in that film.
So Buford here didn't set out. Look at this is a great picture of him. He's wearing like these 70s pants and he's got this like big old baseball bat. I mean, he had to have a name for that thing, like Lucille or something.
October 21st, 1973. For his bat. Oh, I bet he did. I bet it was called Betsy. Betsy is a good name for a bat and a gun.
But he didn't start out in law enforcement. He was like a Marine, and he lived in Chicago. And in Chicago, he made a name for himself on the professional wrestling circuit. He was known as the Big Bull or Buford the Bull. He was a big guy. I mean, he was like 6'6", 250 pounds.
This is when wrestling was a man's world.
And much
Before
like
Vince McMahon, this is wrestling.
Much like what we discussed on the Overkill, he even wrestled a grizzly bear and won.
He did.
Yeah, Buford was a badass. So his professional wrestling career was winding down, and so he decided to settle down with his family in his hometown of Adamsville, which is in southern Tennessee. And right when he relocated there, he immediately had a run-in in the area with some Dixie Mafia folks, because that whole area was poisoned with crime and corruption. It was like an epicenter of moonshine and bootlegging. He was beaten and robbed on the Mississippi-Tennessee state line, and local law enforcement didn't really do anything about it. They just kind of were like, who cares? So that's when he decided to run for sheriff. The sheriff, the sheriff, his name was Sheriff Key. He died in a car accident. That's how Buford ended up winning, because he probably wouldn't have won because he wasn't well known. But that sheriff was completely bought and sold by the Dixie Mafia. And
Bent.
so when
he was a bent sheriff.
Oh yeah, no, he was very crooked. He was definitely on the payroll. But so when Buford, got the shit kicked out of him and was rolled, his family threatened. He went to law enforcement. They're just like, nothing really we can do here. So he decided to run for sheriff, and he decided to take on the Dixie Mafia and totally upset their moonshine operations, all their illegal operations, legal gambling, prostitution. He was definitely a thorn in their side. And it was a faction of a chapter, I guess, of the Dixie Mafia called the State Line Mob, which they operated in Tennessee, and they ran rackets in prostitution, illegal gambling, bootlegging, and extortion. And Buford said, quote, "I will answer all calls." And so he was elected sheriff of McNairy County in 1964, the youngest sheriff in the history of the state. 6'6", 250-pound lawman who just had one thing on his mind: law and order.
It's like, oh my God, this is like Judge Dredd in Mega City 3. He's like a real life Judge Dredd.
Yeah, that wrestles bears. So the State Line Mob had everybody with power in their pockets. They even tried to bribe Pusser with an offer of $1,000 per month to ignore their crimes. So that's $1,000 a month in like 1973. It's a lot of money.
So 10 grand is that now, maybe?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's but instead, Buford gave them the finger, and he chose to disrupt the operation of 87 whiskey stills.
Whoa.
Yeah. One of Pusser's campaign pledges was to curb crime without carrying a gun or a badge. Instead, he used his weapon of choice. This we called it the big stick.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
You'd
he called
totally
it the
name
big
it
stick.
after. You'd name it like Big Bertha or something, wouldn't you? Oh, he's missed a trick there.
Yeah, even Negan. I think Negan called his bat with the barbed wire Lucille. You know?
Yeah. It's like,
you think you'd come up with like a
names.
you think a lady name for it, you know? The wooden weapon kind of looked like a combination between like a Louisville Slugger baseball bat and a pickaxe, sort of. And we just looked at it; it kind of just looked like a thick, bat.
It just looks like like a big piece of wood that bits has been chipped out of. I imagine on some redneck skulls.
Well, he did carry this big stick, but he also used firearms to defend himself, especially when his life was threatened. And his life was threatened on numerous occasions.
On the daily, I would imagine.
Well, he survived several assassination attempts. February 1st, I guess this was in 1966. Yeah, the movie Walking Tall was made in 73. So Buford was active in like the mid-60s. On February 1st, 1966, a woman by the name of Louise Hathcock attempted to kill Pusser during an on-site investigation of a robbery complaint at her bar, the Shamrock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he walked in there and he was doing an investigation, and she pulled out a concealed .38 and shot at him, missed, and then tried to shoot again, but the gun misfired, and he pulled out his gun and he shot her and killed her.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
One of the local deputies, one of Pusser's deputies, described Louise Hathcock as being as vicious as Al Capone. Just definitely another member of the Dixie Mafia.
I think if you're a landlady of a pub called the Shamrock, you have to be as vicious as Al Capone.
They said he was forced to shoot in self-defense, but people are questioning that. People have questioned that.
Oh, yeah, right? Well, do you know what? Why not? Wipe the scum off the street, Buford. That's what he wants to do. Wants to clean the scum off the streets.
So, as you can imagine, Buford was a pain in the ass to the Dixie Mafia guys. I mean, he upset their whiskey operations. He, closed their bordellos. He closed their gambling houses. He would raid on the regular. He would pour out their moonshine.
He's taking their fun away. Yeah, he's going for all their fun things.
So they didn't want him around anymore. So one of the many assassination attempts here, but this one actually ended up in tragedy for Buford here. August 12th, 1967, Buford Pusser and his wife Pauline answered a disturbance call phoned in at 4:30 a.m., which is weird that he'd bring his wife out on the call, but maybe she liked to go, for the ride.
I think because I watched this film recently, I watched Walking Tall, and all the way throughout it, he is trying to get her and their children to move away, but she is just as into cleaning up, getting rid of the Dixie Mafia as he is.
As devoted as he is.
Is completely as devoted. So she would often go with him, and it's kind of like another thing is a bit of safety, isn't it? To just have, because she's handy with a firearm too.
Well, maybe she was concerned. I mean, he's answering calls at 4:30 in the morning on his own.
And by this point, he's having assassination attempts. But
he's a formidable guy.
And he's a big
Buford
boy.
The Bull. But anyway, they drove down New Hope Road, 4:30 in the morning, and they were ambushed. Bullets were fired into their vehicle, and Pauline was shot in the head. He floored it, stopped 2 miles away to tend to his wife's wounds, while the assailants then turned around, ambushed them again, firing .30 caliber bullets in the vehicle, and Pusser was shot in the face.
Yeah.
And so that's where you can kind of see his face sort of looks misshapen, deformed. Pauline was killed, and Pusser was just left for dead. But he survived. Doctors said he was struck on the left side of his jaw by at least 2, maybe 3 rounds from a .30 caliber weapon. And he spent 18 days in the hospital before returning home, and he would need 14 plastic surgeries to restore his appearance.
My word.
Yeah, there's the look of that guy.
He still looks better than that kid, the Judas Priest kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he looks better than him.
So now Pusser had a vengeance. He had, he was back with a vengeance. He vowed to bring his wife's murderers to justice. But unfortunately, he was unable to bring Kirksey Nix, who he did his research and found out Kirksey was behind the whole assassination attempt. But
Not Kirksey.
Yeah, he wasn't able to bring Kirksey to justice. But supposedly, he took out several members of the Dixie Mafia to avenge his wife's death. He was never charged in any of these murders, but I don't think anyone would. In the subsequent years, though, 3 suspects, not Nicks, suffered mysterious deaths that people say could have been attributed to Pusser.
Good lads.
His revenge story was later depicted in the 1973 film we were talking about called Walking Tall, which they made like 2 sequels of that.
Yeah, I didn't know they'd made 2 sequels of it because it has a very definitive ending and also a very boring ending. I would say it's an okay film, but I found it pretty boring.
Yeah.
But I had seen the Rock one first.
Oh yeah, the Rock one, wasn't he like an Iraqi war veteran or Afghan war veteran? He comes back to his small town.
It takes a lot of artistic license, the Rock one. Whereas obviously the Buford one, I would say, is very, very, very true to the story. It's like there's a lot of courtroom stuff. They seem to be in the courtroom a lot and he's just arguing with these people. It's like a lot more of like that type of action.
Which is crazy because listen to this. Listen to Pusser's stats here. During his 6-year tenure as a sheriff, he survived at least 7 assassination attempts, many violent encounters. He was thrown out of a window, run over by a car, shot in the face. He twice killed criminals in self-defense. Quote, self-defense. Wow. He was personally shot 8 times and stabbed 7 times.
My God.
But he survived. Yeah, you know. And in his first year as sheriff alone, he raided 42 stills and arrested 75 moonshiners.
He's making a lot of enemies.
Oh,
this
my God.
Isn't going to end well for Buford.
It's a one-man war, yeah. He prosecuted prostitution rings. He busted illegal gambling houses. But he was never murdered by the Dixie Mafia, surprisingly, because, I mean, it's a one-man war this guy was waging. But he died on August 21st, 1974 of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Apparently, earlier that day, there he is, Buford Pusser, killed in the crash. You can go to a museum, the Buford Pusser Home and Museum in Adamsville, Tennessee, and you can actually see the Corvette that he was driving.
No way, can you? Oh, yeah. I want to go and see it.
Yeah, the wreckage.
I love the wreckage of a car. So
he was contracted with Bing Crosby Productions in Memphis to portray himself in the sequel to Walking Tall. And so, that evening, returning home alone from the McNairy County Fair in his specially modified Corvette that he drove, he struck an embankment at high speed. They ejected him from the vehicle, and the car caught fire and burned, and he died. But there was a lot of speculation that there was some sabotage to the steering mechanism and the tie rods of that Corvette.
I bet there was.
The state trooper who worked the accident and claimed that Pusser's death was caused by drunk driving without a seatbelt. But there's never an autopsy performed on his body. So I'd say he doesn't seem like the type who would drink. Seems like the type who is drunk on revenge, but he doesn't need to be drinking whiskey. Yeah, that is kind of weird. I'm not sure. This is kind of interesting. I found this song here. So Buford Pusser, he didn't really write this song. It was written by a country musician named Wayne Jackson. But Buford's being interviewed in it. He's actually using sound bites of Buford. It's called "It Happened in Tennessee." This is obviously someone was recorded this.
Buford, where did it happen?
In the state of Tennessee. Understand that McNairy County is no bad place to live. It was a den of thieves down there along the line that had gotten out of hand, and the good people was getting scared of it. That's just what it boiled down to.
Wasn't there a woman that ran?
It's hard to understand.
Down
there? Yeah, Louise worked there since she's 15 years old. She started off as a prostitute there. I had to take her life in 1966 and a gun shootout.
Righteous God-fearing.
About a year before that, we were raided her on stolen property and illegal whiskey. She was drunk, and then she was just more than she could stand, I reckon. She opened fire on me, and I returned fire and killed her.
So right there, he was talking about Louise Hathcock.
Yeah, saying she was drunk.
Yeah.
Was there any revenge by any of her people?
Oh, yeah, this towhead, he was responsible for a lot of the action that went on there. He was just around place.
But yeah, people check out the song. It's actually a part 1 and part 2. So one side of the 45, it's this version with the musical background and the interview with Buford. But the second half is actually Wayne Jackson singing the song called "That Happened in Tennessee." You know what it
sounds like? It sounds like, "Oh, won't you please, Mrs. Robinson." In my head, all I could do is
I can see that melody. Yeah.
And then I shot her because she was drunk.
But yeah, it's kind of a cool song. We're gonna actually end the show with a guy who Eddie Bond, who did a whole album on Buford, The Legend of Buford Pusser.
A rockabilly king.
Yeah, I know he's very inspiring. He's kind of a folk hero in a sense. So that was Buford, very high-profile crime people might have heard of. But the next one is the Gypsy Camp murder, which is probably the most notorious crime in the Dixie Mafia lore, the Gypsy Camp murder. This happened the night of February 18th, 1969. 5 masked men armed with handguns and rifles descended on a trailer park near Covington, Louisiana. The Skibo trailer court was on a bayou off of Lake Pontchartrain, which is not too far from New Orleans, and it was a winter home for a group of about 50 traveling carnival workers.
Oh my God! This is just like the lowest of the low.
The carnies. This is where the carnies lived. So during this period, this is like in February, Mardi Gras, full swing in New Orleans, and so many of the camp's residents, including nearly all the men, were working at Mardi Gras in the French Quarter. So there were about 24 people at the camp at the time, mostly women and children. The crew, the masked men, quickly rounded them up, used chains and padlocks to bind them. And then they went through 10 trailers, and they collected about $12,000 in cash and jewelry. Now, it was rumored that the victims had completely underreported how much was there by about $100,000 to avoid trouble over undeclared income and unpaid taxes. But either way, it was far from the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they had heard was being hidden there. So they heard. I wouldn't. Well,
would you rob a carny? Like, to me, carnies, I'm like, they don't even have teeth. Like, how can they even have monies? The men don't have teeth. Okay, you don't go and rob them.
Well, they'd gotten a tip that they pooled their income, and there was like safes that were hidden with like hundreds of thousands of dollars that
I would just
saved.
Disbelieve it. Carnies, come on. They get paid in quarters.
You're talking about rednecks who would just kill anyone for like $100. So if they find out that someone's like, oh yeah, here's a tip, you know, that gypsy over there has like $300,000 in a safe in her trailer, they're going to be like, yeah, we'll go check it out. So they took a woman there named Margie George, 44-year-old gypsy fortune teller, who was described in the media as the Gypsy Queen. And they were grilling her about where's this safe? Because they knew there was a safe there because they were told by a, quote, reliable source that there was a safe.
She's not a good fortune teller, is she? Otherwise she would have seen this coming.
Well, she argued, yelled, and swore at them and just refused to give up any of her cash. So she wasn't going to play ball with them on this one.
Good
so
for her.
One of the guys just got sick of her swearing at them and defying them, so he just plunged a hatchet into her skull.
Oh no! Oh, she definitely didn't see that coming, did she?
She was a gypsy. I mean, these gypsy fortune tellers, you know, they're con women in themselves, you know.
Don't say that, because have you not seen that Sam Raimi film? You know what? Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah, but I'm kind of scared of them. I would never, like, if one of them asked me for a favor or something, I'm going to help them out. Because you get a lot of these Armenian gypsy women here. But I wouldn't go to one and pay them to read my fortune because I know it's a scam.
Why not? Bit of fun, isn't it?
I don't know.
Not for her, though. She certainly had a headache.
Well, they plunged a hatchet into her skull, and the other guy shot her. And then they fled by car and boat with the $12,000 that they had stolen. Investigators considered it a well-planned job that just didn't go off as smoothly as it should have. But it didn't take them long to arrest a Dixie Mafia burglar, even a low-level Dixie Mafia guy named Bobby Gale Gwynn. And he just completely ratted on everybody. He told them enough to piece together an idea of who was involved. Ringleaders were Kirksey McCord Nix Jr., obviously.
Kirksey!
I think Kirksey was just involved with every, shady operation that these guys are running. And he was building a legendary reputation at the time, as being, here's the poster for Walking Tall.
Sorry, I forgot
Pretty
to show
cool,
before.
yeah. But Kirksey was building a reputation in the underworld here as being like the leader of the Dixie Mafia, along with another guy from Texas named Bill Clubb. Arrests more. There's Kirksey. There's Kirksey.
I'm sorry, but I am kind of attracted to this man. I think it's the gold, personally. I don't know. You can just tell that he's a bad boy as well. He's totally got that in his eyes.
I wonder if he's got like soft Southern accent.
I think he totally has a soft Southern accent, and he probably had a penchant for wearing a velvet. I would go to dinner with this man to an Italian.
He's from
dinner.
Oklahoma, so he's not from he doesn't have a Cajun accent.
Yeah, but that's where he lives. It's all the gold. I would go to dinner with him.
Well,
to an Italian restaurant.
He was definitely one of the more ruthless members of the Dixie Mafia. He was arrested along with Bill Clubb and 3 other men for the Gypsy Camp murders. The case took an even more bizarre turn a month later when a reputed hitman and a known close associate of Kirksey and Clubb, Gary Elbert McDaniel, was found shot 3 times, and his body was found in a river. McDaniel's murder was thought to be connected to the Gypsy Camp case, but it was speculated that he was killed to make sure he didn't become an informant, because a lot of these guys would just fold immediately, because I think they didn't want to go to prison. They first of all didn't have any money, and probably were making very little money from these other Dixie Mafia members. And I also think there was no love lost between these guys. I don't even think any of them liked each other.
Oh, I'm sure there was some friendships with people, but yeah.
Alliances, but they were probably loose.
Yeah, these guys are all criminals and crooks, and they're just gonna jailhouse turn on each other.
Well,
the only rule of no snitching is soon gonna be forgotten about.
Well, McDaniel here, who was murdered, was a prime suspect along with Nix and 2 other men in the ambush and murder of Buford Pusser's wife, Pauline.
Oh.
So authorities initially suspected gang members killed McDaniel because they're afraid, that he was going to become an informant. But other people said that, he was actually murdered by someone else. Buford Pusser.
No way!
But
it all comes full circle.
Yeah, but it was never, he was never charged with the murder, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I hope Buford did it. I hope he did.
So the Dixie Mafia, in its, probably most powerful form, is really, I would say, mid-60s to about 1982, 83. Because by 1980, all these guys were either dead or in prison. Kirksey was already arrested. He was in prison. Bill Clubb, Gillich was in prison. So and then a lot of them, were shot, shot to death. Either killed for being informants or Buford Pusser got them. But even incarceration couldn't stop these guys from committing crimes.
What's Kirksey doing in jail?
Well, he's up to no good.
Oh,
so
Kirksey
McCord Nix was a suspect in the assassination attempt on Sheriff Buford Pusser. He was also involved with the Gypsy murder case, but he was actually ended up being convicted and received life in prison for the murder of Frank Corso. This is in 1972. Corso was a New Orleans grocery executive. They broke into Corso's home, and he murdered him in his home. So this happened on Easter morning in 1971. Nix and his gang broke into the home of this wealthy grocer executive named Frank Corso. Corso was awakened by his wife, grabbed his gun. He fired at them. They retreated, but then they shot back at the homeowner. He died in his wife's arms, but he did hit one guy. He hit Kirksey Nix square in the chest, and the bullet lodged in his abdomen.
Oh,
the next day, Kirksey showed up at St. Paul's Hospital in Dallas where he received treatment, but was arrested by Dallas authorities. So they managed to get him out of the house, but they took him to the hospital, and he was arrested. In 1972, Nixon and his cohorts would be convicted of the murder of Corso and receive life in prison. So that first picture we saw of Kirksey, that was him receiving life in prison after being charged for the murder of Corso. So Kirksey was in prison, and he was orchestrating elaborate extortion schemes from behind bars because he believed that if he had enough money, he'd be able to buy his way out of prison because that's kind of how he had been living his life. I mean, he was like the son of a prominent judge. I'm sure his father was crooked, and he was just paying off everybody, paying off all the law enforcement officials except for Buford, obviously, to, turn a blind eye to his crime. So I think in his mind, he's like, if I make enough money, I'll just pay off a judge and get out of prison.
He's kind of also not wrong. You find the right judge. It's that simple.
And it seemed like everyone's corrupt there. Now, this is the thing that I find the most fascinating about this guy is the scam that he was running from prison. He called it the Lonely Heart Scam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he ran this from a Louisiana state penitentiary. The scam targeted innocent gay men.
Oh, that's taken a turn already.
Yeah. He placed ads in gay publications posing as a young stud named Eddie Johnson to attract correspondence from unsuspecting readers. And so when the victims got in touch, he duped them into sending the mob large sums of money to pay for his, quote, legal defense. So he had associates inside and outside the prison walls that would have attractive young prisoners place personal ads in gay-oriented magazines. So he had, gay porn mags. They would place these, suggestive ads, and they're saying they're prisoners that needed help and needed money for their legal defense funds. And you basically had a prison pen pal with these lonely gay men. And so gay men who answered the ads would receive correspondence along with pleas for money for legal expenses, personal needs, food, etc. Sometimes the prisoner would say he was about to be released and he wanted plane fare to visit his new friend.
I would love to read some of these letters if these are still surviving. I bet they're quite salacious.
So a lot of money, well, it was letters and pictures.
Oh, yeah. I would love to find one of these letters.
So he was basically running a gay porn operation in a sense. Well, kind of a extortion scheme.
A scam,
also.
Yeah. Very, very intelligent for the time.
Well, it became an extortion scheme. So a lot of money came flowing in. Hundreds of victims. They were sending out, that's pretty much, he had a whole operation with associates inside, associates outside. It became a business here. One guy in Kansas mortgaged his house and sent $30,000 to the scammers over a period of months.
He wanted that prison prick, didn't he?
But this scam did become an extortion scheme because some of the prisoners eventually confessed that the scheme to the victims, and they threatened to out them if they told anyone. So they're like, start sending me thousands of dollars or people are going to find out and find out who you are.
Yeah, and this is in the early 80s, and it was still a totally different culture, wasn't it? Coming out now, it's obviously difficult.
Well, yeah, but
you're much more accepted into society than you would have been in the early 80s.
Oh, these guys were completely closeted, but they were a lot of them were lonely gay men that were businessmen who own their own businesses, their own companies. They're mortgaging their homes for these guys.
I imagine some are married with kids as well, getting embroiled in this situation.
So the Dixie Mafia from this scheme received hundreds of thousands of dollars while Kirksey's in prison. And the money was wired to Nixon's associates at a law office in Biloxi. So what happened here, all this money was being wired into this law office of his attorney named Pete Hallett. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but Pete Hallett or whatever. Got a picture of him.
Hallett.
So the operation kind of sort of went south here when $500,000 suddenly went missing. So $500,000 disappeared, and Kirksey wasn't too pleased about that.
Oh no, Pete, what are you doing with that?
Yeah, Kirksey had a distressing conversation with Pete, who actually was the mayor of Biloxi. And Pete was the mayor of Biloxi and Kirksey's lawyer. And Kirksey was like, "Hey, Pete, where's my $500,000? And Pete said, "Oh, that money was taken by my former law firm partner, Vincent Sherry, who was then a judge of the 2nd Mississippi District Circuit Court."
No,
And
it
so-
wasn't, Pete. You are a liar.
So Kirksey was like, okay, Vincent has my money. Well, let's put a hit out on him. So he ordered a hit on the judge, and Sherry and his wife were murdered in their Mississippi home in 1987.
Oh my word.
Yeah, Nix orchestrated this murder from prison. Nix and later Hallett, you can see him here in chains, were both convicted in the conspiracy that led to the judge's death. Hallett was released from prison in 2012. I think he served like 18 years, while Nix continues serving a life sentence. Strip club owner Mike Gillich, considered perhaps the most important Gulf Coast Dixie Mafia connection, he went down along with John Elbert Ransom, a notorious one-legged hitman of the Dixie Mafia.
Cool.
So all the big guys here kind of went down in the mid-'80s with this murder of Judge Sherry. Nix is still in prison. He was in a federal supermax prison in Colorado where he remains locked down 23 hours a day.
I'd kind of like to write to him. I always think supermax prisons, are you allowed to write to the prisoners in supermaxes? I always forget.
I don't know.
But yeah, I might write to him and be like, I admired your jewelry that you had on in your picture.
Yeah, I don't know how many gay scams he's doing from the supermax.
He must be old now. He must be in his 80s.
Yeah, he's got to be in his 70s or 80s. So, after the 80s, I mean, things kind of dwindled down for the Dixie Mafia, and not much has been really heard, from them. Did they disappear? Are they still in operation? Who really knows? But you could almost say that it was sort of changing times kind of that led to their demise. Sentencing and parole laws changed, became tougher. Communities cracked down on a lot of these illegal operations. Law enforcement had better technology to gather intelligence, so it was probably harder to get away with it. The drug trade became more of a focus than armed robberies. So, I mean, because there's more cash here to be made with drugs. But now it's like, not just the Dixie Mafia running the show. Now you have like Mexican drug cartels. They're becoming involved. You have like Russian and Albanian organized crime. So, the Dixie Mafia had once established itself as this like fearsome, criminal organization. Well, now there's equally fearsome criminal organizations that you have to compete with.
Who are better run as well.
Yeah, probably better organized.
Well, of course they are, because they're run like actual businesses where there's heads.
But who's to say if they completely disappeared? I mean, they were never like...
They won't have.
Yeah, well, they were never like a very, well-organized crime group like the Mafia. I mean, there's no code of conduct or respect or hierarchy in it. I'm sure there's still guys who run rackets in these small towns. Probably, meth operations and things like that.
Oh, of course there will be. Undeniably so.
And there's still drug gangs that proudly embrace the name Dixie Mafia.
Yeah,
so
excellent.
I'm sure there are. And I'm sure the murder for hire business has never gone away.
Well, we do shows about that all the time, where it's like we do news stories where a guy's like, I got offered $5,000, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go and kill her at her doorstep.
Who knows?
Yes.
Have you ever seen the TNT show Claws?
No.
This is where
tell us about this.
Well, this is where I first heard of the Dixie Mafia, because I had never really. I don't know. I guess I was never really aware of the Dixie Mafia. Oh yeah, there's Judge Vincent. Judge Vincent Sherry and his wife that were murdered by the Dixie Mafia. But yeah, this TNT show Claws, which I think is in like second or third season now.
Too many seasons.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched it. I watched some of it because my ex-girlfriend loved the show, and I'd watch it. I kind of like Niecy Nash, who plays the main character. Desna is kind of cool. She also has like an autistic brother who's like full on Rain Man autistic. He's pretty amazing, and you like see his dick. Yeah, which is
this must be. Yeah, is it violent? Do you see blood and murder?
Oh yeah, no, that's very violent.
Okay, well that's different to how I would have thought this would be.
It also has Dean Norris, who plays Clay Uncle Daddy Husser, who's the head of the Dixie Mafia in Florida, wherever they are. Dean Norris played Hank in Breaking Bad. But it's kind of, I mean, it's an interesting concept, kind of a cool show. It's about 5 manicurists at this nail salon in Manatee County, Florida, and they enter the world of organized crime where they begin laundering money for the Dixie Mafia. But then they end up like kind of owning their own criminal empire. It's kind of an interesting show.
I've never heard of this. I don't think this is on British Netflix. I don't remember seeing it.
I don't know what channel it is. I don't remember. Actually, I don't know how she was watching it. She must have been watching it on Netflix. Maybe Hulu or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, so anyway, that's where I first heard of the Dixie Mafia. Uncle Daddy was leader of the Dixie Mafia. But yeah, people go check out Walking Tall about Buford Pusser, the legendary Buford. People's episode 784 here, Sick and Wrong. We have some news stories coming up next. We have some phone calls a little later in the show. But first, here's a promo about our Patreon page.
Hey guys, it's Steven again. Just calling from heaven through a miracle of cybernetic processes. Just to say, thanks for creating your Patreon page. I love to kick back and smoke a fat one with my boy Carl Sagan, while we listen to the extra phone calls and stories we get all the time. Anyway, talk soon. Love you. Bye.
So the first news story we have here has to do with a despicable person. This guy is just a garbage human. Although any story we do on Sick and Wrong is about garbage people, so it fits.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. Man who drowned his 2 autistic sons in L.A., in L.A. Harbor, gets 212 years in prison.
Okay, yeah, this guy's an asshole. In a harbor.
Well, yeah, he just drove them right off the wharf and drowned them deliberately.
Oh, okay,
kids.
so
yeah.
It's a tale of patricide.
Well, for an insurance scam. A Southern California man was sentenced to 212 years in prison this past Thursday for killing his 2 autistic sons in order to collect on their accidental death insurance policies. Ali El Mazayan, he's an Egyptian man, intentionally drove his ex-wife and 2 of their children off a wharf into the water at the port of Los Angeles at a dock that's used by commercial fishermen. This happened April 9th, 2015. This guy, I mean, I've never met the Wad's dad, but he certainly brings the Wad's dad to mind. And you'll see why.
The Wad's dad wasn't about murder for money, though, was he? I think the Wad's dad kind of drew the line at murder. The Wad, ring in. Tell us.
Well, we don't know what the Wad's dad was capable of. And plus, I think the Wad's dad was Palestinian, not Egyptian. But close enough. He was sentenced Thursday to 212 years in prison for murdering his sons and attempting to kill their mother in this plot to collect on these insurance policies. The judge called El Mazayan's crime evil and diabolical. U.S. District Judge John F. Walter here. He had said he rarely came across such a case of despicable conduct. And he said he could only imagine the horror and pain of the boys who were strapped in the back seat as the car filled with water and suffocated them.
This guy's an idiot, right? Because what he should have done is he should have said that he killed them because they're severely autistic and he was very worried about, he felt bad that they were suffering. He should have played that card, or his lawyer should have played that card. It's still murder, but he would have got a lot less time if he'd have lied and said something like that.
I don't think he could have, based on his history. And not to mention that he was attempting to kill his wife, who didn't have autism, who was in the car with him, his ex-wife. What's particularly troubling, said the judge, was that El Mazayan worked for 2 years to carry out this murder plot. This was premeditated. He planned this. 2
years, and it still failed. What an idiot.
Over time, he bought 8 life and accidental death insurance policies, providing $3.4 million in coverage. He waited to commit the murders to avoid raising any suspicion of fraud.
I'm sorry, but 8 life insurance covers. There's your suspicion, mate. You're going to jail.
Well, he might. Yeah, well, exactly. But I think he did it from 8 different insurance companies. He brought it out, planned it out. So it was over a certain limitation,
did he not think
time period.
Did he not think that the taco-eating cops of California weren't going to investigate this accidental death?
I'm sure it'd be pretty obvious to the detectives.
He's pretty...
And not to mention... Well, I wonder if his... I wonder if he would have got away with it had it not been for his pesky wife, who survived. I don't think he thought that was going to happen. Seated in the second row of the courtroom was Diab, that was his wife. She was wearing a navy blue hijab. And next to Diab was the couple's surviving 20-year-old son, El Hussein El Mazayan, who stepped up to the microphone and berated his father in court. That's great that the son, I wonder if the WAD would have loved to have gotten a chance to do that.
I think it is like, have you ever seen the Jeffrey Dahmer trial where all the victim's family get a chance?
They all got a chance to
oh man, they are
flash
vicious with him,
Dahmer.
some of them. But the worst one is the guy who's saying to Jeffrey that he forgives him, and he's like, I forgive you for what you've done. And Jeffrey Dahmer just breaks down. He's
really?
Crying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were people I think I've seen footage of that. Like people were screaming at him and crying.
Somebody tries to go for him. Yeah,
someone went at him.
Wouldn't that be great if someone had wronged you and then in trial? Because it's quite a rare thing. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. I'm surprised that they gave this guy this platform to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to happen often. So good for him.
Yeah, I wonder if the WAD was just
things to say.
Why'd my stepsister have to be so fat? God damn it.
Why did she have to entice me to shag her, that sodbuster?
I'm not going to kill your goats. Speaking on behalf of himself and his mother, he accused his father of leaving them in misery and poverty, squandering his savings on his low-life family in Egypt. He said, "We wish my brothers didn't die for your financial gain." This makes me wonder if he had a second family in Egypt.
If it means his extended family, maybe his brothers and sisters, his mom and dad, his cousins.
That could be true, but I think this guy's the particular breed of scum who would have a second family. He was planning on getting rid of this one that was just a failure of a family, using this money to build a palace in Egypt. He said, "I hope you know I don't want anything to do with you anymore." He said, "Don't call me, don't write me," which makes me think, this guy sounds like such an asshole. I'd have cut him off years ago.
Yeah, 20 as well. Well, it's probably 20,
why.
Yeah.
El Mazayan, who's only 45 years old, younger than me, was wearing a beige jail jumpsuit, and he had his ankles and his wrists shackled. He didn't address the court. But apart from occasionally glaring at his son, he sat expressionless. And he listened to the proceedings through a headset from an Arabic interpreter. Prosecutors recommended a 212-year sentence, which is the maximum allowed by law here. He was convicted of mail and wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering at a 9-day trial in 2019, although federal prosecutors said they lacked the jurisdiction to charge him with murder.
Oh, that's a bit odd.
Isn't that weird? So the killing of his sons and his attempted drowning of his ex-wife were central to the scheme to defraud the insurance companies. They didn't have enough evidence, or there wasn't their jurisdiction to actually, proceed with a murder trial here. Right. Which it seems really strange to me. The younger boy was actually still alive when the firefighters got him out of the water 10 minutes later. He was in the car for 10 minutes.
Oh, my word.
But he died at the hospital. Yeah. Well, the judge here, the U.S. District Judge, Walter, praised federal authorities for taking up the case again after the district attorney said they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute him. And then they decided to charge him with capital murder. They reversed course, charged him with capital murder and attempted murder for the wife. So a little background on El Mazayan here. He met his wife, Diab, as college students in Cairo in 1996. They married 3 years later, and they moved to Los Angeles in 2000. They filed for divorce in 2009, but they kept living together, even as both pursued sham marriages to regularize their immigration status.
Oh, no. Yeah, this also just sounds so terrible. That's the worst, though. It's they have to stay living together because probably neither of them can afford to go and move somewhere else, and they've got to just being together would have been awful.
Yeah, they lived in a cramped home in Watts, which is not an affluent area of L.A. During this whole time, El Mazayan had been physically and mentally abusive to Diab. He slapped, kicked, and choked her. She even said at the trial that he threatened to gouge her eyes out.
This guy's a stand-up fellow, isn't he? He's just so lovely.
Not only a stand-up father, loving husband, too. I'm probably triggering the WAD's PTSD right now. Don't you think? I feel bad if he's listening.
The WAD, if you're listening and you're upset, just turn it off, buddy. It's okay.
Just skip ahead to Kate's story.
Yeah.
El Hussein, the son, testified that he once saw his father beating his mother in the laundry room, and he recalled him menacing her with a butcher's knife, saying, "I could cut you like a watermelon." Which I'm sure the WAD's heard that one before. The younger brother's autism placed an enormous stress on the family, as you can imagine. They lived in a cramped home in Watts, and they struggled with chronic financial troubles. I don't think El Mazayan was a great provider.
I don't get that view of him either.
Both boys were extremely hyperactive, and they required diapers throughout their lives.
Oh, no.
Yeah. On April 9th, 2015, El Mazayan suggested to Diab, his ex-wife, that, how about we take our young sons to a lunch at a restaurant in Inglewood? And after lunch, she said, hey, maybe we should stop by the seafood market. I'm in the mood for some seafood.
You're skipping ahead. What restaurant did they go to? Was it like an Olive Garden, do you think? Chuck E. Cheese?
In Inglewood, probably. I'm not sure.
Is there a Chuck E. Cheese in Inglewood?
I was just in Inglewood. That's where I got my vaccine. I did not see a Chuck E. Cheese there.
So he's not going for a proper restaurant, is he? He's got 2 autistic kids. It's probably McDonald's.
You know what? I bet you it's Shakey's. Shakey's Pizza. Shakey's is kind of like, it's like a lower tier Chuck E. Cheese. But it's, I bet she's going to Shakey's. I remember you telling
me about Shakey's. Because if he's coming out of there and he's still hungry, he's obviously been to a fast food place, hasn't he?
Yeah, I bet you they probably went to like Burger King, and then he's like, "No, I'm in the mood for seafood."
Some food. Imagine like Burger King as your last fucking meal. Like he could have splurged. He could have got them lobster tails or something. What a dick!
That guy has no money. I was gonna do that, and plus they're autistic and they're shitting in their diapers. They don't give a shit. They probably love Whoppers. So he's like, "I have an idea. Let's go to the San Pedro Wharf. Go get some seafood." And as they pulled into the parking lot, El Mazayan was like, "Hey, look at that passing ship. It's a beautiful ship. It's so incredible. Let's take a closer look." How about a little closer? And maybe a little closer. Meanwhile, he just stepped on it, accelerated right up the wharf. And a couple of commercial fishermen said that they heard screeching tires and just a big thump as he just went over the edge and saw Honda hurl into the water at like 80 miles an hour. The one fisherman said, I saw a car just like flying through the air. It just bounced a few times and just started sinking. And his wife, Dion, told jurors that immediately she watched El Mazayan just climb right out the windows, like within seconds, to escape the car. Didn't help the family. Didn't bother to help the wife. Yeah, he swam away. And she was unable to swim. Like, she feared she was going to die. She said, I started to feel that death was very close. So I started reciting my prayers because that's going to help. Witnesses said they saw El Mazayan just quickly surface, swim over the ladder on the wharf, didn't do anything to rescue the boys or their mother. I'm wondering if, once he got up the wharf, he's just added on the histrionics, just like, I need mouth to mouth. One of you big, strong sailormen. I'm dying over here. Mouth to mouth.
This accent.
That's what the WAD sounded like, the WAD's dad. When Diab managed to actually get out of the car, I mean, she was drowning. She was screaming hysterically, screaming, my kids. Well, another fisherman, tossed her a life preserver, and they're able to fish her out of the wharf here. Over the next several months, El Mazayan, moved forward with his scheme. He collected more than $260,000 in the accidental death insurance policies. He laundered it to hide the money from the ex-wife, so she didn't even know about any of these insurance policies. Prosecutors said that he sent most of it to Egypt, buying a big boat and a huge home right on the Nile. Now, I'm beginning to question whether he had a second family. I think he was building a harem.
It sounds like it now.
He had like
a boat and a mansion.
8 hookers in this big mansion with his boat. He's like, I am out of here.
I am leaving the autistic kids.
And drown them. So, yeah, he's serving 212 years in prison, and he's ordered to pay the insurers back $261,751 in restitution.
At his meager pay of probably like 12 pence a day in the prison kitchen.
What a vile man.
Yes.
Yeah, loathsome individual. What do you have here for the second story?
Well, my story is kind of the opposite to yours because it's about a good man.
A good Sam?
A good Sam. And the headline is that girls, 13 and 15, charged with felony murder for alleged carjacking of an Uber Eats driver.
What?
I'm going to get hungry.
Why would you carjack an Uber Eats driver? This guy's he's doing a duty for society.
Firstly, that's also so annoying because imagine if you've ordered your pizza and fries, you're waiting for it to arrive. It's not arriving. You're on your app. You're getting pissed off. You're going to be giving this guy like 0 stars. Meanwhile, while he's going through the worst thing he's ever experienced in his life.
Worst Uber Eats driver I've ever had.
Yeah. So he was
waiting for my pizza for 2 hours.
Mohammed Anwar, who is 66, an Uber Eats driver, was described as hardworking and always ready with a smile. And he leaves behind a wife, 3 adult children, and 4 grandchildren. He's a family man. Is Mohammed Anwar.
Another Arabic gentleman. That's very interesting.
Another Arabic, yeah. This is the good Arabic gentleman.
Yeah, you have like an honorable, good Arabic gentleman. I have like a vile, horrible garbage person.
So this is 2 teenage girls. They're facing murder charges. 13 and 15 years old after a botched carjacking attempt led to a crash and they killed the beloved 66-year-old grandfather who's been working as an Uber Eats food delivery driver in Washington, D.C. He's originally he's not originally from there, but he had moved from Springfield, Virginia, and he was in a Honda Accord, clearly a popular car for some unknown reason, where 2 girls of the ages 13 and 15 allegedly tried to carjack him.
What were they? What was the game plan here? Like, what were they going to do with this car?
I just think drive it, but like
where? They're 13 and 15.
I'm often hungry, so I can see why you would go for it. Well, I know Uber Eats cars aren't necessarily marked as Uber Eats, but if a car is driving past you and it's marked as Uber Eats, I'd probably be more inclined to take that one.
I guess they're not
food.
Typically they're not marked. I don't think there's any kind of insignia or anything. I think they're
sometimes they are. I have seen ones that do say Uber Eats. And
I kind of
I'm scared.
I'm aligned with Steele on this. I'm of the same mindset with Steele. I don't trust people. Like I don't mind if you work for like Olive Garden or whatever, like a Chinese restaurant, you deliver my food. But these Uber Eats people can be anyone. It could be anybody.
Well,
my fucking brother was doing it. I wouldn't trust him to deliver my food.
No, but if they're working for a restaurant, if they're working for that takeaway, then you can ring that takeaway and be like, some of my pizza was eaten.
Yeah, and you get another one.
Yeah. So
but these guys, like they probably, I mean, I guess if you look statistically, what are the odds here of these guys jacking off on your food?
I would say that Mohammed Anwar is not jacking off on the food, and I would happily have him bring me my fries and pizza.
You don't know that, Kate.
Don't you be mean about Mohammed Anwar. I like this man.
Just saying, you don't know that. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Well, stop talking
Don't
about
judge
Mohammed's
a wanker by its cover.
Jerking off, this poor man. So the girls, their names, because they're minors, their names have not been released, but they assaulted Mohammed Anwar with a taser while carjacking him. And this led to an insane car crash because Anwar was struggling with the girls as they tried, because they tased him, they got into the car, and then they're trying to take the wheel off this man.
Did they both have a taser?
I think they
did. Is it a taser or a stun gun?
Into it. Taser. It says taser.
So a taser shoots out like a... Where the hell did they get a taser? Can you buy those? I know you can buy stun guns.
I thought tasers didn't shoot out. I thought you could get the tasers where you press it and it goes nah. You can just jab it.
That's a stun gun.
Oh, is that a stun gun?
Yeah, taser shoots like a little like a, I don't know, tentacle thing that like attaches in you and then you get like the shock. So I'm surprised they had one of these.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about all these types of weapons. I'm British, mate. It's knives only here. I could tell you about a knife.
So their game plan was they see this guy. Was he parked?
Yeah, I assume so.
So he's parked. Did they get in the front seat or did they get in the back seat?
We'll get into it.
They're like 13-year-old girls. How hard was the struggle?
I think, well, they're tasing him as he's driving. Are you going to tell me that you're going to be like, 13 and 15 as well? You can be strong. Don't judge a 13 and 15-year-old because they could be.
If a 13 and 15-year-old girl got in the back of my Prius and they were trying, I would turn around, grab my mag light, and I'd be like, get out of the car, ladies.
Mag light.
Yeah.
As they're tasing you.
I'd pull the Prius over, and I'd be like, I don't care if you have stun guns. You wouldn't be able to get me. Stop, drop, and roll.
This is what you think. The car crashed into the 1200 block of Southeast Van Street, which is a kind of near the National Park in Washington, D.C., if you didn't know it. And it flipped twice on its side. Anwar was thrown from this car, and he was found lying on the sidewalk with life-threatening injuries. Wow. The two girls, naturally, they were fleeing the scene, but they were caught by police officers and just a random member of the National Guard who was in the area. It's Washington, D.C.
They had to have been injured, though. I mean, the car flipped.
No, apparently they were fine. Unlucky Anwar, though, he was rushed to the local hospital where he was pronounced dead. They didn't even try.
Were they wearing a mask in the car?
I'm not sure. The same day.
You should wear a mask.
They were caught the same day because, they're not master criminals. They were arrested. They were charged with felony murder, which is very unusual for minors to be charged with felony murder and armed carjacking. But little shits. They've appeared in juvenile court and they pleaded not involved, which means not guilty.
Not involved.
Dickheads.
Like who else was involved? Isn't there a camera? Don't they have like don't a lot of these guys that drive for Uber Eats have like cell phone video?
So at one point during the carjacking, a detective testified that Anwar had gotten out of the car after apparent struggle. So I imagine they've probably tried to get in the car, maybe while he's parked up. Maybe he's just taken some pizza to someone. He's getting back in, ready to go and take his next order. And then they're getting in the car and he's maybe driving away, trying to get away from them. And then they're tasering him.
Okay, wait. So they were laying an ambush for him.
Or he was sat in there because he tried to get back out of the car. And the 13-year-old girl, she turned on the ignition from the passenger seat and she started like moving the gear shift around, and Anwar was half outside the car while they were doing all of this.
Were they trying to okay, so they got in the passenger seat, they were tasing him, and then he was trying to escape from the vehicle?
I think so. And because they were going so fast at this point, this is when the car crashed, it flipped, and Anwar's head was just busted open like a watermelon.
God, I would have slapped those girls. I taught them a lesson.
Yes, with your watermelon busted open head.
If they would have tried to get my Prius and tase me, I would have pulled the Prius over and I would have taught them a lesson.
Kids, if you don't stop, I am pulling this Prius over.
I'll come back there.
Let them take the rabbi's Prius. It's an ugly car. Let them take it. Yeah.
It's the principle, Kate.
These two little shits, they are going to obviously wait for their next court appearance as they've pled not guilty. And the police are building up the case now. So Anwar's family and friends are obviously grieving for him. A relative has set up a GoFundMe to help the family pay for all their funeral costs and to make up for his loss of income because he was the family's only provider.
What? How big was his family? Weren't there like 3 kids and a wife?
His wife and 2 adult children.
What? And he's the only provider? What do the other 2 do?
I wonder if because the adult son must be providing for his family because he has 4 grandchildren in Pakistan.
Oh,
so he's back in Pakistan.
Oh, okay. They don't live here.
I think his wife lived there. He's got 2 adult children in the US and another adult son and 4 grandchildren in Pakistan. So he's got 3 children.
Okay, what do the 2 adult children do? Why aren't they providing?
Maybe they are providing, but he's the family's provider. He's the dad.
Yeah, but the guy's working for Uber Eats. How much money are you making? There's something fundamentally wrong here.
He could have been fucking great Uber Eats driver, for all you know.
I don't know.
Could have been a great... And
okay.
do you know what?
Well, then, in that case, what happened to the food? Was it delivered?
Oh, don't, because I would be so upset if I was waiting for my delivery.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Came. I would like to know too what happened to the food and what
was he getting Chipotle or something? Like, I wonder if like the person never got the Chipotle. Is it like, what happened?
Anwar, this is what his relative wrote about him. which is very moving. He was a hardworking Pakistani immigrant who came to the United States to create a better life. A better life, D, for him and his family. But for working for Uber Eats is going to make a better life for him and his family. He was a beloved husband. He was a father, a grandfather, an uncle, and a friend. And he always provided a smile when you needed one. We will carry him with us always, but it doesn't take away the pain of losing him so tragically and so unexpectedly soon.
He was murdered by two 13-year-old girls.
A 13 and a 15-year-old. He left Pakistan to come to America to be murdered by
13-year-old
girls. Teenage girls who are then going to deny that they've done this. How the fuck have they got a taser?
I want to know what. I just want to know what were they going to do? Like carjack the guy and go where?
I just don't get why they would like carjack.
Were they making a TikTok video? Like, what are they doing?
TikTok. That's what the kids do nowadays. They use it. A TikTok.
Were they live streaming it on Facebook? I mean, I don't know. Instagram.
They would have been. No, the kids don't use Facebook.
They don't use Facebook or Instagram.
Nah, it's TikTok. The kids would have been live streaming on the TikTok.
Were they? Yeah, I don't know. Were they part of like a criminal underground or something? And they were going to sell the car? This does not seem like a very well thought out plan. Does it say what it was a Honda Accord, right?
A Honda Accord.
Does it say what
seems
year?
like no, it doesn't. But it's better than a Prius.
No, it's a nice car. Honda Accord's really nice.
Oh, I don't like Hondas. I think they're shit.
My brother used to have one. My brother's ex-boyfriend, his grandfather had like this is probably, it was in 1999. This is probably in like 2008. He had like a 98, 99 Accord that just kind of sat there. Like he maybe put like 500 miles on it a year, barely drove it. And so my brother ended up buying it off the grandfather for like, I think $1,000. It wasn't even that much money. And so my brother just never used it, but he just wanted to have a car. And so he parked it in the Tenderloin. I'm sure I told this story on the show, but he parked in the Tenderloin. And so every now and then, like, I'd borrow the car and go get tattooed or whatever. And so one time we were going somewhere, or we were walking to the car, and when we showed up, he parked like kind of around, there's one area that didn't do any street cleaning, and it was around this park where a lot of homeless people would sleep in this park. And the homeless people in San Francisco, they shit in between parked cars because it's kind of like, I guess there's some, I don't know, shelter,
it's
I
cover.
suppose.
Yeah,
sort of cover. So anyway, one of them took a shit on his front bumper of his car. And it kind of reminded me.
It's just a turd.
Yeah, it was like a turd, just a log on the front of his car. And so my brother was furious. He like had a whole tantrum and it was just like stomping. He's like, "You gotta clean that off." I'm like, "I'm not fucking touching that. It's not my car." And so
just drive it, it'll fall off.
Well, it didn't, and it like hardened, and it was just like on the tip of his car. It reminded me of Boss Hogg, who had like the cow steer antlers on the front of his car. My brother just had this homeless man's turd.
This
he just
petrified shit, yeah.
And he wouldn't get the car washed because he was like, "Well, it rains all the time in San Francisco, so it's gonna fall off." But it just, it was on there for months because I would borrow the car to go get tattooed, 2 weeks later, and I'm driving up with the fucking turd antlers, on the car.
Oh my word, that's so funny.
I'd like to see the 13-year-olds try to steal that. Wipe their noses in it, teach them a lesson.
I know. Well, I hope they receive, even though like minors aren't usually, minors are usually treated pretty well by courts. I hope these two face a long time. I like Mohammed Anwar.
I hope Mohammed's family, take some retribution here.
Pakistan could do.
To bring up the Princess Bride, they should be like, "My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father." So maybe they could be like Muhammad's kids. Go find take some retribution on these two 13-year-old girls. Teach them a lesson.
Kill Bill. Kill two girl kids.
Make them listen to this podcast in the back of a Prius. 2 hours.
Oh, God. Nobody wants that. That's fate worse than death.
Cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah, poor guy. I mean, I really wonder, like, who's the victim here? Is it these 13-year-old girls because of like, lack of parenting,
Yes, but like, do you know what? I was playing GTA. I was playing GTA at that age, and still I knew that I should never go and fucking get into a stranger's car and try and steal their car. Like 13 and 15, you can make stupid decisions, but this is like a lack of morals.
They could have been could have been diddled by their drunk dad. You don't know this. So maybe
Are you
that's
implying
maybe
that I got
society.
diddled by my
No, I'm
drunk
just
dad?
saying maybe society wronged them. So are they the victim here? Or about Muhammad's family? Are they the victim? Or is the true victim the person who put that Uber Eats order in there and never got it?
They're the true victim for sure. I'm hungry now.
What I want to find out is if they actually do recover the food and find out that he spooged all over it. And if it's if there's semen in that food. Yeah, would that be great though? Would it change your opinion of him?
No, because I genuinely think that most Uber Eats drivers are splooging on the food. But I think this was like the one time that a man did not splooge on the Uber Eats food.
You have no idea. Maybe those two 13-year-olds had ordered some Chipotle and they got it, and it wasn't sour cream on that Chipotle.
And he'd splooged on it.
Yeah.
And then
so
they decided to
like,
get revenge.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Could come out in court, in which case, then yes, they are the victims.
People, send your stories, sickandwrongpodcast@gmail.com. We have some phone calls coming up next, 323-522-4032. And just to make sure you tune in, I'm going to give quite a revelation about what happened to my nephew's foreskin.
Yes, we're still talking about baby penises every fucking week now.
It's a hot button topic here on the podcast. So stay tuned for that. But first, before we get to phone calls, here's a word from Adam and Eve.
What do you do when you're at a family reunion or Thanksgiving? You got a raging boner that won't go away and you're considering fucking your grandmother. You go to Adam and Eve, of course. You buy a jerk-off sleeve, pocket pussy, something of that nature, so you can go in the bathroom and just take care of that raging boner before you have to bend over your grandma at the table and just fuck her. So go to adamandeve.com and type in the code DIDDLE, D-I-D-D-L-E. That's what Grandpa used to do to your dad. Talk to you later. Bye.
So we got some phone calls to get to here. 323-522-4032 is that number. Remember to keep it under 3 minutes. We'll play it here on the show. Also, a lot of people have been sending us recorded MP3s. You can totally do that, or people even send Facebook voice messages.
To either of us, I will also accept them.
Yeah, feel free to do that, and we'll play it here on the show. A lot of different avenues for you to be heard here on Sick and Wrong. So, as I was mentioning before, there's been a lot of debate on the future of my nephew's foreskin. Should we allow him to be intact? Should he be cut? That's the question. A lot of people have been weighing in. I saw that Warwick Davis posted a poll on Facebook.
Good egg.
I think it was overwhelmingly in support of him keeping the foreskin.
I thought it was hilarious. It was like two American folk were like, cut it. And
I voted cut it just because I was going with the underdogs.
I know. Every British person, it was like every British person's call to arms over foreskin at that moment.
Even women. I'm surprised.
Keep the foreskin. I'm telling you, there's no difference between a foreskin cocked and an unforeskin cock.
I find it hard. Well, I think you're saying that because you've only seen erect penises. An erect penis is the foreskin like retracts. But what I'm saying is I bet every girl out there has had an experience at one time with smegma, and you're lying.
Honestly, I'm not. I have many girlfriends, not like that. And none of them have been like, oh my God, I was with this guy last night and the smegma was all over my teeth. Never.
Well, I think it's an evolutionary trait of the northern slag. I think over the years, you've just come to taste it and be like, oh, that's what todgers taste like.
We've got smegma
Give me
vision.
another
We just
bit of cheese in my cracker.
We can't see it. Cheese on a cracker.
I think it's just like, it's like a little garlic aioli and you'll just swallow it down.
Don't you even mention aioli around me. I would
eat
that whole tub.
This listener calls in to weigh in on the debate.
Hi, Dee. Hi, Kate. I've had to phone in about poor baby. Well, it's Ozzy now, isn't it? Not baby Shmooly, but they're really. You cannot mutilate that poor child. Honest to God, I just can't understand how, in a world where female genital mutilation is looked on as.
I'm not pro just male circumcision, by the way.
Abuse that, on the same hand, it's fine to chop a Jewish baby boy's willy off, or in fact any American baby boy's foreskin off. It just doesn't seem right. For a start, it's not anybody who's doing the chopping's penis, is it? It belongs to baby Shmooly, and if he really, really wants to have it taken off, he can do that later in life.
Yeah, but it's way more painful.
I was about to say,
it's
the
much
Jewish
more invasive
thing is
surgery than when you're like 15 or 16.
I know, and the Jewish thing's a bit different because that's like your covenant with God, which, like, if it's for religious reasons, whatever. Religious people are wacko.
Whacked.
Yeah, whatever. But other side, for religious reasons, to say like, oh, it's for cleanliness. Like, what the fuck ever? He's living in San Francisco.
My sister's not going to raise the kid to be Jewish. I mean, I think she wants the kid to be like, I'm culturally aware of my Jewish heritage, but I'm not a practicing Jew. She's not going to. She hasn't been a practicing Jew, so I also don't think you can have a covenant with God when you don't believe in a God.
Exactly. But I mean, that's like, so I can kind of see why, like, people who are facetiously Jewish do it. But outside of that, because it is an American thing, isn't it? The baby's born, you chop the foreskin.
I think it's a Judeo-Christian thing. But anyway, we'll see.
Yes, okay.
See what she has to say.
Secondly, it's not more clean. You're either clean or you're not clean. And if you're not cleaning your willy properly with a foreskin, you're certainly not going to clean it properly without a foreskin.
It's a lot easier to clean it without a foreskin.
Can I? Yes, because you're speaking as a man who's experienced foreskin.
Well, no, you can do a Cuban shower, spray a little right guard on it, done.
Oh, we call that
peel back the skin.
I call that a horse bath. I really like this lady's voice, and I kind of wish she was. It kind of sounds like when your mum sits you down and she's like, right, I'm just gonna have a word with you right now, and then your mum like reads you like the rights, but she does it in a nice yet firm way. This is this woman.
You think
she's
we're
reading,
being scolded,
but in a nice way. She's not being a dick about it. I kind of wish she was my mum.
It's a constructive scolding.
It's a constructive scolding. I like it.
Which region is her accent from?
I'm not quite sure. Just like maybe Midlandsy. She's got like a British mum accent. I like it.
Yeah.
And it's up to the women that are faced with these penises to educate the men on what they're supposed to do for hygiene's sake. It's not difficult, is it? I've certainly said to people, right, you need to wash that, mate. And they have, and they've been happy, and it's...
Who are you shagging? You need to... How many times have you had to say that, Kate? You need to wash that, mate.
Sometimes you are encountered with like a smelly cock, but I mean, usually that's like after a night out, after you've been like, both in a pub drinking and nightclubbing, you can just like kind of forgive it. And usually I actually find that the smell of the balls is more overwhelming than the smell of a cock.
What about the smell of the taint?
The taint, the gooch. I actually have had a friend years ago who went down to give this guy a blowy. It was in an alleyway. So I'm setting the scene
in an alleyway. One of those reputable women that you hang out with.
Yeah, and she said that she unzipped his trousers and he got his cock out. And she just said that like the wall of smell hit her and she was like, oh.
Did she still do it?
No, she was like, my house is round the corner. We'll just go there. You can wash your dick in the sink and then I'll give you a blowy. And of course he did it.
Classy woman.
Yeah, they took it up a notch, didn't they? But she said after that, it was like a kind of, she didn't want to be doing it, but she's here, so why not?
You gotta love northern birds. You really do.
Hey, we're classy, through and through.
Yeah, opportunists. There's a cock in front of your mouth. What else are you gonna do with it?
Like, what else are you gonna do, mate?
I'm fine. So also, like, the girls, Americans go on and on and on about how it's cleaner, how it's easier. They don't know what to do with a foreskin. But honestly, it's so much easier to give a hand job if there's a foreskin than if there isn't. When I was 17, 18, my first proper boyfriend, my first experience of a penis, he was circumcised because his mum and dad thought it was cleaner. So he was done as a baby. And I'd been told by all my friends how to wank. And I got there and I'm like,
I have a lot of questions after this. I'm going to let her finish the story and I'm going to ask some questions.
Okay.
Oh my God, what do they mean? I didn't know he didn't have a foreskin. And it was really confusing. And it wasn't until I got with a guy who did have a foreskin that I was like, oh, I get it now. And obviously,
it's so much easier on the wrist.
Well, it is.
Hey, I've gone on from there and give brilliant hand jobs. And also, people with foreskins, they enjoy the sex a lot more. It does take away some of the sensation. It does change it. A foreskin is there for a reason.
You last longer.
So please, 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 I'm with Jer on this. Do not abuse that baby. Let him keep his foreskin intact and make that decision for himself later. Keep it sick, keep it wrong. Love you both. Love what you're bringing to the show, Kate. Bye.
Oh my God, I love this. Can we? I want to call her Mom.
She is pretty cool.
I love her.
I'm gonna call her Mrs. Doubtfire. So, Mrs. Doubt Circumcision. So, is that true? Is it easier to give a guy with a foreskin a hand job?
Yeah, it is, because like you've got, it's like a kind of sheath there, and also like a foreskin kind of provides the moisture. So when you've got a circumcised cock, there has to be some moisture going into it, doesn't it? You can't just be grabbing the cock. You got to like spit on it or use other means. So
just grabbing a circumcised cock versus a sheathed cock, you'd just be like, I can just jerk this off, and it's so much easier on my hands.
Well, it's like, yeah, it is. It's easier on the wrist. And like, I bet she does give a good hand job. She sounds like a woman who gives a good hand job.
My second question is, did you talk to your female friends about like, so how do you give a hand job? Like, is that something girls talk about? Like, did you guys like, did she train you on her dog or anything?
No, growing up, girls totally talk about, like, you ask questions. This is how girls are different to men. And I think there's actually a Sam Kinison joke when he's like, men, did anybody tell you how to lick pussy? And they all go, no. It's like, whereas girls,
have to do that.
Women talk, and women are like, oh, is this right? Like, should I be doing this? And then women read about it in magazines. We watch porn. We observe. We're that type of creature. Whereas,
so you would get together with your friends. You're like, well, my dad likes it when I do it this way.
Well, his dad is circumcised, so we should ask.
Well, I've heard though that it is true. You lose sensitivity because the foreskin's it's all sensitive nerve endings.
But yeah, it's
so
protecting
when it gets cut off,
it's protecting the gland, the most sensitive part of
your dick.
Cock.
So you lose the sensitivity. But I've also heard you last longer because of that.
But I mean, there's been no difference in, maybe it's because I have a diamond level pussy, and men just instantly ejaculate as soon as they put their dick in me.
So wait, you have to deal with like premature ejaculators every time? The curse of having that diamond level pussy.
It is. But I've never noticed the difference between my foreskin boyfriends and my like circumcised boyfriends or like shags. I've never been like, oh yeah, well, he lasted 45 minutes. Wow. So it was like, if someone's shagging you for over an hour without ever coming, oh my God, that's fucking boring. I want to kind of like, no, I don't want to be shagged.
Tell that to Sting. He would think otherwise, right?
That's different because his cock is not in her pussy. That's what I mean. Nobody wants to be shagged with a cock in their fucking pussy for an hour. No, they do the tantra, don't they? It's all foreplay, no action.
I thought it was tantric.
Tantric? What did I say?
Oh, no, I thought it was taint trick.
Oh, stop talking about taints.
So, okay, one more question here, and we'll move on, because she calls in with a part 2.
Oh, I love her.
So is it true that, like, were you, when you first saw a circumcised dick, were you like, my word, I don't know what to do with this circumcised penis?
Well, my circumcised dick was also it was a 2-for-1 because...
You had 2 dicks? Jesus Christ, you're northern. You are definitely a northern bird.
Stacked on top of it. It still remains to this day.
Of the pub.
The biggest cock I've ever seen.
Wow.
And he had to have his foreskin cut off because his cock was so big. And I was 19 and I'd never seen a cock that big in real life. But he even said to me, like,
is he a black guy?
I've got a big dick. No, he was Irish.
Oh, wow.
He won't be listening to the show, but he knows who he is. And he had to use like 2 hands to wank with, which I'd never seen before. And like his hands didn't meet.
Wait, so like Donald Trump drinking a glass of water?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
That's how he wanked. And so it was like my first time having a fucking big dick. And my first, no, because it was too big.
Oh,
it was too big.
All right, good.
And then,
I feel better now.
Yeah, you never want a too big dick and you never want a small dick. You like Goldie Cocks. You want something in the middle.
Okay, so were you shocked by the size of the dick, or were you shocked by the fact that you circumcised?
I was definitely more shocked by the size, but then I did say to him, I was like, "Oh, I've never been with like a cut guy before," and he told the story about he's had a fucking monster dong. He came out of the womb with a monster dong, and it's just always been huge. And he was like, just spit on it more, and that's all he said. That's the only advice he gave me. So I was like, "Oh, okay."
Spit on it more. Words to live by, I guess.
Yeah, just spit on it
more.
Well,
here it's the reverse. Like here, I've heard so many. Like my friend Sleazy E, when he first moved here, because obviously he's British, so he had a foreskin. He was just like, American women were just like, "What the fuck? Like, what the fuck is that? I don't know what to do with that. Like, oh my god!" Like, and shocked. Like he said, a couple girls were like, "I'm not gonna deal with that." Yeah, but these are most. I mean, obviously, don't care.
Yeah, I know, but still, I mean, it's not like it's just a dick. At the end of the day, you just deal with it. There's some ugly ones, there's some good-looking ones, some foreskin ones, there's some non-foreskin ones. But I think
spoken like a true northern bird, it's
like
just
a true
dick
northern
slang. At the end of the day,
it's just a dick. At the end of the day.
That's the name of Kate's memoir.
Yeah,
it's just
I want
a dick at the end of the day.
I want a T-shirt that says that.
By Kate Rambo.
Yes.
All right, here's a part 2.
I love this woman.
Hi Dee, hi Kate. Just a quick part 2 because I've just listened to what I've actually sent you, and I realised that I've only said it from a women's point of view, and I didn't want to insult anybody or not be sensitive to anybody else. I do understand that penises are not just there for the women. Men enjoy them as well. So I'd like to include everybody in the fact that if your partner has got a dirty willy, doesn't matter who he is, just send him to the shower. And secondly, I did say chop a willy off, and I'm a bit embarrassed that I used the term willy anyway. It seems a little bit immature, and obviously I'm very mature.
She's like the only conscientious caller I think we've ever had, because this next call that's coming up, this guy
Can we nickname her Kate's mum? Because I really wanted to be my mum.
Well, this next caller has no qualms about what he's about to talk
willies.
about.
Do you know what? I refer to willies as a flaccid term. I will call them willies as a joke. I'll be like, "Oh, what a silly willy." But then, like, when they become hard, that's when you use the hard words for a cock.
Like todger.
You call it a cock. No, a todger is also when it's soft. You can be like, "Oh, look at that todger."
What do you call it? A trouser snake when it's soft, or when it's
trouser? Well, yeah, that's when it's soft, isn't it? Because snakes aren't hard, are they?
Secondly, I do know that it's just the foreskin that comes off, not the willy. I'm not a complete rotundo. Anyway, that's all. Just wanted to apologise for just mentioning girls when a boy should have got a mention too. Love ya. See you later. Bye.
You know, the name of my memoir is Not a Complete Rotundo. That's mine.
What you should do, you should be like O.J. Simpson when he with his book If I Did It, we're in the brackets with I did it in big, and that's what yours should be, not a complete
rotundo.
In brackets, and then just D. Simon rotundo.
You know, she brings up an interesting point though. I bet it's easier to masturbate with a foreskin. It's almost like you have a lubed up dick sleeve.
You have a lubed up dick sleeve.
Well, lubed up dick sleeve,
that provides moisture, and also you've got full sensitivity, so your cock is 100% sensitive.
I bet you people with foreskins just wank all the time.
Well, men wank all the time, don't they?
Yeah, I mean,
most men.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously as you get older, you don't, but I mean, still, I guess if I had a foreskin, I'd be wanking every day.
Wanking every day.
And the Taco Bell drive-through.
That's a sign if you're single. If I had a foreskin, I'd be wanking every day.
That's the name of my memoir. If I had a foreskin. Decent.
Well, everything that my dream mom has just said, I agree with. I think it is like this day and age now, is in the Western world, unless it's for religious reasons, which whatever, I don't give a shit about. But if you're just going to be like an atheist Gentile like the rest, then keep your foreskin. It is mutilation because you're taking away something that nature is providing you with for a reason.
I love how
you may
Kate
be able to live without it.
I love how Kate is so woke about this, but if you ever hear what she has to say about the Me Too movement, you'd be shocked and appalled.
Well, me and Deadbook were talking about that, weren't we?
All right. Well, here's the moment everyone's been waiting for.
Here we go.
I spoke to my sister about this the other day. Yeah, she called me because I was illin from the vaccine. And I mentioned that, it's become a hot button topic, Shmuley's foreskin and what's going to happen to it. And I told her about the poll that Warwick Davis put up and, how it's overwhelmingly in support of him keeping a foreskin. And I also told him about like the callers we had that were like weighing in on the issue. And so she said, "Do you want to know what we did? We had to make the decision like 2 days ago." And I was like, "Yeah, what'd you do?" She goes, "We decided to keep it." She said, "Yeah, they said it was a topic of much debate." And she said obviously she's not religious, and my father's not around anymore. Even though I don't think she would have done it because my father said he would have preferred that to happen. But she was saying that she felt like, I don't know, it's tradition, and she just kind of was like, sort of, I don't really feel strongly either way. But Jer was very strongly against it.
Well, even when we did those patron outtakes, he was like, it was his thing. He was like, it's not going to happen.
I was surprised he was really against it. The reason he's against it is mainly because the mutilation aspect, but also because it's unnecessary surgery. Like, there's
why would you do that to your
You don't
child?
need to do this. Your kid's born with this. What, are you going to cut the tip of his finger off? Like, why do you need to do this?
In this day and age, you don't. I can see, 100 years ago when baths and showers were like less.
Exactly.
Frequent.
And I think when in terms of cleanliness, and they say this about like the tribes, transmitting, like African tribes transmitting STDs and things like that. Well, yeah, they don't have access to like, bathrooms like we do. They don't have access. Shower. Yeah, like, the same hygiene protocols that we have. And the Israeli tribes and the Muslim tribes of like, before Christ or whatever, they also didn't get to bathe every day. So I think much like the dietary laws that you find in the Bible, it's the same thing applies to like circumcision. And I think that's why these things came about. But they're not relevant anymore. The Bible's not relevant.
They are changing.
The times have changed. And so my sister said that their gynecologist, their OBGYN or whatever, was like, so we need to talk about what you guys want to do about this. And she was like, well, I don't know. She goes, well, let's talk about it. And so she said that she circumcised her kid. Most people go in and get their kid circumcised because the dad says that's what the dad has. Like the dad's circumcised and they want their kid to be the same, like aesthetically look like the dad. And that she said that's typically the reason why they do it. It's not really like an overwhelm. I mean, there's obviously Jews and the religious, motivation to do it. But typically, she said most Americans do it so your kid's dick looks like your dad's dick.
And I imagine it'll be because the dads have been told it's cleaner.
Well, they said that, but then my sister brought that up, and the doctor was like, "No, that's not really applicable, especially to a first world nation." She's like, "So don't even believe that." And she had 3 doctors that said that it's not.
That's good.
Yeah, she's like, it's not. That's definitely not something that's applicable in a first world country, like we live in. So she said and then she was like, "We circumcised our first kid, but then we didn't circumcise the second. They had 2 boys." And she said it was an issue with her because she says she feels guilty about performing the circumcisions because she has to do it when her patients ask for it. But she's like, I don't try to talk them out of it. She's like, I usually be very transparent about how I feel about it and what it means to do this. But I don't try to like persuade them one way or another. It's their choice. Ultimately, it's their child. She's like, but she said she personally feels bad about doing it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what her doctor said. So, but even then, my sister was just like, the doctors told my sister, she's like, and Jer, she's like, ultimately, this is your choice. It's
not Jeffrey's.
I'm just explaining the facts to you, and you can ask me anything from a medical or scientific standpoint, and I'll tell you. She's like, but it's your choice. And so Jer, was very, very anti-circumcision. And,
wow.
Yeah, and Jer actually had a conversation prior to this with his friends that his best friends from high school who also have kids. And, 2 of them were like, no, you got to circumcise a kid. But 2 of the other ones were like, no, you definitely don't need to do that. And so it was kind of a weird debate even he was having with his friends, but they decided not to circumcise Shmuley. So Shmuley has a foreskin.
Hey, he could fit into Britain, mate. He can come over to Europe and be one of us.
In the end, for lack of an end, no, I told my sister, I was like, obviously, I think you made the right choice because I'm kind of in the camp of like, I don't think surgery, if you don't have to have surgery, don't have surgery. You should have surgery when it's like a life-saving measure. I don't think you should go in and have, unnecessary like facial surgery if you don't have to. I don't think,
it's like the appendix when you think about it. Yeah, you can live without your appendix, but your body is so much better when you have an appendix. So
I just think if it's unnecessary, why take the risk? I mean, and the other thing you got to think about too, it's like I'd like to compare how many times kids have foreskins that are too tight, they have to be removed versus how many botched circumcisions there are. Because if you botch your kid's circumcision, you're going to have a serial killer on your hands.
Oh,
that's
totally.
How they're made. So why take the risk? Honestly,
just leave the baby penis alone.
I think the people have spoken, and I agree with my sister. Shmuley has a foreskin. Thank you, Kate's mom, for calling in, though. All right, last call here is from a guy named Walden, who has a question for both of us, but I think mainly for you, Kate.
Oh.
Hey, Dean, Kate, it's Walden Scott here. And I just wanted to ask you guys a quick question.
It's like the poet laureate of Sick and Wrong, Walden Scott.
He posts some, can I say that? I recognize the name from Reddit, and he makes some great memes. So thank you, Walden, for your continued
So
efforts.
I've been doing a lot of driving lately, and obviously that means a lot of time sitting down. And one of the best things about driving by yourself is the ability to just have a good fart, without being judged by anybody. And you have the freedom to just fart. And if you're lucky enough to have a heated seat, then that kind of makes the farts want to come out more, I think.
Is that true?
I don't know. This is how poor. Well, firstly, I can't drive, so I don't even own a car. And I think I've been on a car that had heated seats like once.
I guess I don't know. I mean, I live in California, and none of our cars have heated seats.
Oh, yeah, you don't need to have a heated seat ever.
So, yeah, I guess that's a question for the listening audience. If you have a heated seat, does that, inspire you to fart more?
Well, I suppose it would because it's relaxing your muscles, isn't it? The heat is relaxing your muscles.
Oh, maybe. So like your sphincter just kind of like, yeah, is relaxed. And so you lose control of like the fart.
These phone calls about fucking foreskins and how relaxed sphincters.
Foreskins and farts are important topics here on Sick and Wrong, Kate. You need to learn that.
Like when a seagull is stamping its feet on the ground to try and make the worms come out. That's kind of what a heated seat does to an arsehole.
Okay, we've both learned something.
So, when you're sitting down in the car and you fart, normally it just escapes into the atmosphere for the whole world to enjoy. But sometimes you experience the fart bubble, which is when the fart comes out and it wants to escape between the gap that is between the thigh and the testicle, and it gets stuck.
Your taint.
And you get stuck with this fart bubble.
Fart.
And it's just embedding all sorts of poop particles and shit flakes and God knows what else.
Floating fecal matter. That's the thing with farts. That's why, like, when I go to bathrooms, I don't drink in a bathroom. I always leave
drink in what, like a public bathroom? People drink.
Yeah, I notice this when you work in an office environment. People walk around with their water bottles that they just get, and some people bring their water bottle into the bathroom.
You never take food or drink into a bathroom.
I leave it outside because there's floating fecal matter from farts.
I was about to say, unless you're having a bath, in which case you have to take in an alcoholic beverage. But other than that,
yeah,
no food or drink in the bathroom.
You might have in the fart bubble, just implanting these into the balls and the thigh area. And you have to try and do this little wiggle dance in your seat to try and release the bubble. And then, when it does come out, off it goes. And toodaloo, as they say. But it's really uncomfortable and I don't like it. And I want to see if this happens to you guys as well. And, for the ladies out there, does the fart bubble ever, get trapped in the area, shall we say? Because it seems like a perfect fart bubble catching mitt sort of shape. I don't know. It's a weird phenomenon. Phenomenon. So yeah, the fart bubble. So let me know. Is it just me? Or are you guys fart bubble veterans as well? Anyway, keep it sick and wrong, guys. Adios, motherfuckers.
He brings up a very interesting point, something I've pondered as well. So, do your labia trap the fart, like so it becomes like a vagina fart? Because your taint is much smaller than my taint. So you would probably have maybe like an inch, half an inch between your asshole.
It's like a half an inch.
And your vagina. So
maybe an
do
inch,
you sometimes fart and it gets trapped in your vagina, like in your uterus?
Not in the uterus. The uterus is like, that's like what the baby comes out of your uterus. Your vagina.
Oh, so it doesn't go that high in there.
I think the technical term for a vagina is like the outside.
Oh, okay. So the area of your vaginal canal. So do you ever fart and the fart goes into the vaginal canal?
Yeah, that happens.
Does that happen?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and then you've got to re-fart out that fart from your pussy.
But that's not a queef, though.
It's not a queef. It's the fart that you've farted that has gone into your pussy, and then you have to fart it out of your pussy. So it's been on a travel.
does it make the same sound coming out?
No, it's like duller by now because it's probably lost like some of its it's traveled.
You're lying.
I'm not
You're
lying.
Totally lying. All right,
I'm not lying.
You farted and it went inside your vaginal canal, and then you farted out the fart again.
Yes, it's totally a thing. It happens. At least maybe because I've had a lot of hot dogs thrown down this hallway, so I just suck in anything within the stratosphere that goes near it. It happens. Totally does happen. Women don't talk about it, but guess what? It happens.
So it happens. Does it happen when you're usually sitting down? Probably.
Yeah, when you're sitting down, and it's usually if you're doing a slow fart, that's when it happens.
And you can feel it going inside your vagina?
Yeah, or sometimes it'll whoosh past your vagina. And
does it flutter the labia, like the fluttering?
Yeah, woo, like a butterfly's wings. Yeah, it'll sometimes
playing
rush
a
up and
xylophone.
go past your clit. But yeah. Or like what are they called? A harp at a fancy wedding.
Wait, do you ever... Okay, I'm actually kind of excited about this. This is interesting because I've never really had this discussion. Have you ever farted and has it stimulated your clit, made you horny?
Probably. Yeah. Probably.
Wow, that is really fascinating. I never knew that a fart could stimulate a clit.
Well, do you know what? Like sometimes, especially in the summer, if you're out like wearing a summer dress, maybe you don't have underwear on because it's the summer, and if it's like gets really hot, sometimes it's like 30 degrees in the summer here, so you don't have underwear on, you got a summer dress, and if there's a bit of a breeze and that goes past your clit, that'll turn you on. Women get turned on by random stuff just as much as men, because you know, like vibrations on a bus will make a dick erect.
Oh yeah. I mean, anything can sometimes make a dick erect.
So
it always becomes erect at like the most inopportune moments.
So we have we have female equivalents of that.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, yeah, the fart bubble usually does happen when you're driving. And the one thing I've always kind of hated about the fart bubble is because if you're driving, especially with someone else, and you think you're just going to sneak one out, but you don't sneak it out because now it's trapped in your taint underneath your balls and everything, but you forget about it. And then, 10 minutes later, you pull up to your destination, you get out, and all of a sudden it's like, and then it's just a smell. And then I'm just like, damn, baby, I need a divorce. Like, what the fuck? Get out of my Prius. Get out of my Prius.
Did you hear that duck?
Like, Jesus Christ. Is there a skid mark on the seat? Like, oh my God. Gross.
Oh, it is.
That's gross.
There are things that make you remember that we are animals and we're not sophisticated animals. And farting is one of those things.
Well, yeah. I've often found it. I always find it funny when someone's just like, fart jokes aren't funny. Like, I don't find farts funny. It's just like, you don't find humor funny.
Okay, Harrison.
Yeah, he never really liked to talk about it. He was always grossed out by it. I don't know why. I'm not.
Yeah, and
I would say obviously it's kind of gross, but at the same time, it's fascinating.
It's fascinating, and yeah, it's the same. It's not like I like fart stories, jokes, but at the same time, I don't want somebody farting in my face. There's a fine fucking line in there.
Okay, have you had boyfriends that are just like cross that line, just like, you're sleeping and they just wake you up with a fart?
Fuck yeah, that happens.
What?
That totally happens.
You've had like you woke up ass in your face and he's just ripping a fart.
No, not when his ass is in my face. No. I do hate. I am a lady at the end of the day, and I do think there should be some mystique and mystery kept, and like just walk into another room, fucking fart in there if you really have to, and then walk back.
Fart. That's where you do that
just
stuff.
Fart in there. But I've definitely had boyfriends in the past who would just let it rip and then be like, "Sorry." It's like, you're not sorry, so don't say you're sorry. Go in another fucking room because it's disgusting, and I don't want to smell your shit. I don't want to. That's not why we're together, so I can smell your shit.
The same guys
ever
Dutch oven you?
That's why we're not together anymore. Yeah.
Same guys ever Dutch oven you?
That has obviously happened as well. Men think Dutch ovening is hilarious, but it's not. It's a nasty thing to do to anyone.
That's the thing. It's kind of like you're sort of fortunate to be even getting laid to begin with. So,
that's what I just said.
No, it's true. It's like you're fortunate to be getting laid, so why risk losing that by pulling the sheets up over your lover's head and then fucking farting?
Yeah, no, I just don't want to smell my partner's shit at any time.
I think it's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
Yeah. Disgusting.
Disgusting. Oh my God, we got through that whole episode. We've only said disgusting once.
Saying it once. I know. It's hard to say that when you listen to Sick and Wrong, and that's like the first word that comes to mind. Thank you, Walden Scott, for calling that in. That was a very thought-provoking phone call.
Thank you, Walden. Yes.
People can call the Sick and Wrong hotline, 323-522-4032. There's a Reddit page. There's a Reddit page with some seriously gross shit on there.
Where Walden posts?
Literally, there's some seriously gross shit on there. So just go to r/Sick and Wrong Podcast and check it out. Maybe I'll post my nunchuck video there. I'm going to post it to Patreon.